Hello, hello, hello. We are ready to start once more. Thanks all for being here. As you know, we are big on honesty in this channel, integrity and things like that. And I do have a bit of a confession to make. I sadly did lie to you, my loving audience of 6 people. I did not, in fact, make tea. I have coffee instead. I didn't sleep terribly well last night. Was pretty tired today. So probably going to be a bit of a more relaxed one for that reason. Also, coffee, greater caffeine content. Is Turkish coffee. I like me some Turkish coffee. Got some cardamom in it. I love it. That said, we did have some plans for today. The idea was to go over kind of a follow-up video to the debate we watched on Friday. We'll see how much of it I watch because I'm not going to have much. Well, I guess I will have some stuff to say, but I'm not going to be in disagreement with the video maker because I think he's really insightful and I mean he's mostly talking about his own experience. So I'm not like what am I going to disagree? Like no, that didn't happen to you. There's that, and then maybe talk about some Magic the Gathering stuff for just a few reasons. One, I think I mentioned previously that I judged a tournament over the weekend, so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And a friend of mine asked me to go over one of his deck lists, so we just kind of chill today. Oh, hey Galit, thanks for showing up in chat. And so yeah, it'll be pretty chill today, and we'll just see how it goes. So let me get my. Oh, that's right. OBS had a weird problem. So give me one second. Let me make sure everything is proper. This would be a lot easier if I just had a window capture, but or monitor capture. But I just want to make sure, just in case there's any random stuff, like my Discord. I don't want like dox my friends or something like that. So we can shoop shop over here. Hey, look, I'm live. Hit me. Uh, oh, woo. Okay, all right. That's hmm. That's a spicy title. That's how they get you with PragerU. Maybe we'll set aside like once a week. This is killing brain cells with PragerU, but not today. Not today. Instead, we have another video to go over. I actually think this is on my watch later, but we can check that. This way I don't forget to remove it. And yeah, here it is.
On my channel,
So,
I've
the context for this is gonna be made very clear by genetically modified skeptic here. This is a creator I do like quite a bit. I think he's an insightful person, has a lot of meaningful stuff to contribute to discourse. He is, as I understand, a agnostic atheist. He used to be, as he'll mention, very religious. At the very least, he was raised very religious, and he's in this wave. Well, maybe I don't know if it's really a wave, but he's in this category of people I like a lot. I consider him and uh, Cosmic Skeptic to be kind of in the same genre of really thoughtful, not angry atheists. And I like them a lot. I think they're doing meaningful good. I haven't watched much of either in quite a bit, and I know Cosmic Skeptic talks about a lot of other subjects. It's my understanding that he was a philosophy student when I started watching it. It's been a while, so he might have maybe in post grad or like doing some actual work or something. I don't know where he is in his life, but it talks about other subjects because those things are of interest to him. That's not really relevant for what we're talking about today. Instead, just a reminder: we watched a Kent Hovind debate last Friday, and it was an absolute nightmare because, well, that guy is an absolute nightmare. And one of the things I like about this video is we'll see why Kent is dangerous in terms of like actual impact, the actual harm he's caused to the world, and it comes up here in this indirect conversation between genetically modified skeptic and Kent Hovind. I don't know genetically modified skeptic's name. I think it comes up in the. I think Kent knows his name, but I've forgotten. We'll see what we have to say about it. Not a super long video, so I don't expect to be here very long, except for the fact that I do not stop talking, and so we've had videos where we're 15 minutes in and we've been talking for an hour. So we'll just see how it goes, and watch the video and enjoy some spicy content. I also, before I just want to get this out of the way before we get into this, want to focus less on videos you've seen before from here on. I was okay with watching stuff that I've already watched in large part because there were a bunch of concepts I knew I really wanted to talk about and I wasn't sure when they were going to come up. But most of those are out of the way, and now that they are, I would prefer, live react content. I think that's more interesting for people, and I don't feel the need to necessarily go over stuff that I've gone over before. So some of the stuff on the watch later list on our plans for the future will end up getting scrapped, but in exchange we should have stuff that's a little more interesting because I won't have exhausted my thoughts on the subject ahead of time. So let's get into it.
Spoken quite a bit about how I grew up Christian fundamentalist. Something I've only
No,
made
I have
mention
heard
of
of
but never discussed, though, is my former admiration of Kent Hovind. I'm going to get to the response which this video's thumbnail promises, but I would like to first give you guys some context to illustrate the gravity of this situation.
I forgot because you guys can barely not quite see the title. Creationist Kent Hovind challenges me, I respond. So Kent Hovind sought out genetically modified skeptic, as we'll see as he'll mention, made a video just recounting his own history with religious belief and just his story, his own personal experience with it, and Kent felt the need to take some shots.
I've been very interested in science as long as I can remember. My parents knew this very well and always made sure I had access to plenty of science books and other educational content as a kid. When I entered adolescence, the educational content at my level of comprehension began to cover evolutionary theory, naturally. My parents, being young Earth creationists, wanted to ensure that I was being taught what they thought was right, so they found and presented me a massive collection of educational videos about creationism. Those were Kent Hovind's.
So this is what I meant when we were talking about what Kent Hovind's educational history is. Now this is less direct than what he brags about doing. This is not what he was talking about when he said that he taught high school science. He meant he would go to people's homes, but in a similar vein, it's Christian fundamentalist creationists want their kid taught creationism, so they get this guy with his fake degree from a diploma mill. Just as a reminder, because I know some people didn't watch on Friday or weren't much paying attention. As a reminder, this guy is claims to have a doctorate, and his thesis opens with "Hello, my name is Kent Hovind," and we only know that because it was leaked. He refuses to share his thesis at all with anyone, despite the fact that it's supposed to be, a contribution to knowledge generally. So, like, yeah, that's Kent Hovind, and uh, you know, the genetically modified skeptic here had been watching educational videos from him from an early age because it was supposed to be science.
Immediately, I took a liking to his ideas and presentations. When I quickly burned through all of his material, and I do mean all of it, I watched it over again. And then again, and again, and again.
Oh, and this is, by the way, why I was going to say fundamentalist, but often just like any sort of any reactionary group or fundamentalist group or very indoctrination heavy group that requires it for their ideas to have value, it are real big on getting to kids young, teaching them before they can know any better to understand why you're full of garbage. Um, so yes, yeah. So in the chat, someone's saying, I think these can be accessed because it's public information. Yes, normally, if you have a doctoral thesis that's through an accredited university, my understanding is it is like by necessity published. But Kent didn't get his degree from, like, let's look this up. Kent he got his degree from a diploma mill. Yeah. So here, let's find this part. So Ken Hovind received a master's degree and doctorate in Christian education through correspondence from an unaccredited quote unquote university called Patriot University in Colorado Springs. Here's the building. This is not this is not an actual university. But it's even right here. It's a diploma mill, and with citations. Uh, it's this is not correct, and so this is why it's been covered up. The only um, the only thing I could find as far as the actual thesis is concerned is a WikiLeaks leak of it, but the link to that thesis, there's a link somewhere here. Here, so you can find the Wikipedia, the WikiLeaks, and here's the PDF. Both are. Oh, this has been They fixed this since Friday. That's actually kind of funny. Oh, you can actually see it now. Oh, this was 502 forbidden on Friday. Okay, I guess it's now accessible, but you can see. So here's his dedication page. Sure. His introduction. Hello, my name is Kent Hovind. I'm a creation slash science evangelist. I live in Pensacola, Florida. This is his thesis. I'll put maybe I should put it in the description to my video. I'll do that now even. This was not accessible on Friday. We went looking for it because he had tried to keep it hidden. When people asked about it, he would refuse to give it up. And this version, or like this, access to this was from a WikiLeaks dump. This is not. He's very much not a doctor. He calls himself Doctor Dino, but very not a doctor, and tries to hide any of the very obvious evidence that that this is not legitimate as hard as he can. Remember, this is a guy we're talking about who's literally a convicted fraud. We talked about this on Friday, but I can clearly see some of the people chatting here aren't uh, either weren't able to make it or weren't able to, or maybe missed that part. He was convicted of structuring, which is defrauding the United States government. So, like this, yeah, he's thoroughly a con man and a grifter. I put the link to his dissertation if anyone wants to read it. I can't imagine what he could possibly have as these. It's my burning desire to help Christians get back to a simple faith in God's word. Does this sound like a doctoral thesis? No, not to me anyway. Well, I guess I don't have a doctorate, so I can't say. Maybe if anyone in the chat has a doctorate, you can go over this. That'd be kind of funny to hear what people who know what they're talking about have to say about this hilarious excuse for a doctoral thesis, uh, which he doesn't like to talk about. He doesn't try to. He'll mention that it exists, but he doesn't like to show it.
I loved Kent Hovind. I sought to emulate his wit, his resolve, and his dedication to the defense of what was, in my teenage mind, simply right and reasonable. Years passed, and my admiration of Kent and dedication to creationism really never wavered. It wasn't until the middle of college that I began to rethink a single point that Kent ever preached.
He'll mention this later, uh, but for his personal experience with creationism and religion, I think he says college was the first time he ever heard any contradictory claim about the creationist position. And that's pretty meaningful. Not a lot of people would have a really hard time pulling themselves out of that kind of belief. It's very difficult to believe something. There's a bunch of cognitive biases that humans have. One of which is I forget the name of it, but that the longer you have believed something, the harder it is to break from that belief, and the more evidence is unimportant towards changing that belief. So it's like I really respect people like this who do something that intellectually difficult and find a way to learn what's actually true about the world when they were told a bunch of things that weren't true. I'm not going to say lies here because I don't want to impugn his parents. I don't, maybe especially if they believe it, they're not really lying. Though I think creationism as a whole is a lie, and when Kent says it, it's definitely a lie because he should know. He should know better. He's been presented evidence that he pretends not to as a mechanism for maintaining his advocacy for creationism.
I've gone over that transformation of my thinking in other videos, so I won't get into it here. Not long after graduating from my Christian university, I was an atheist. I remained in the closet to everyone but my wife for an entire year, all the while seeing from a different perspective and from inside a Christian community how fundamentalists think about and treat atheists.
I
This
will say, if anyone hasn't had this experience of growing up at least around very religious people and then coming to the realization that you don't also believe, this is something that I've had a similar experience with. It is really interesting to watch very religious people having been in that community and now are kind of on the outside while sitting in the room. It's really interesting, and I don't mean that in a way like I don't, that can often maybe that sounds more pernicious than I mean it. It's just really interesting. It's kind of insightful. It's like kind of weird to see some of the stuff that you didn't think twice about, or look at it from kind of a amateur anthropologist lens. It's really interesting. In fact, I remember one instance while listening to someone give a speech, uh, give a speech during a religious ceremony, talking about the positions against non-believers, and like they're saying they're all over the place, and I'm just thinking in my head, oh, they're closer than you think. There's one in the room with you right now. We're so spooky. And like I said, it doesn't not always pernicious. It's just really interesting to see it from that lens, especially because I know I would have to imagine, I mean myself included, once you stop having any sort of religious belief, you don't have much reason to go back to religious places. I did for family reasons, but it's kind of weird to see it from a different lens now.
experience motivated me to start a YouTube channel where I spoke about issues surrounding atheism and skepticism. These days, you guys know what I'm all about on this channel and in my full-time work as an activist. I push for religious tolerance, religious literacy, nuanced discourse, strong standards of evidence, scientific literacy, and I constantly call for empathy toward others.
This is what I mean about ostensibly atheist values. This came up in the Hakakachu and Aron Ra debate, where this is not specific atheist thing, but atheists tend to be really big on, as he said, religious literacy, religious tolerance, scientific literacy, these kinds of openness and non-rejection, I guess is how I would put it. I don't want to say tolerance. It feels a little inappropriate here, but non-rejection of religious beliefs or religious groups, because there's this understanding of, I might want to call it pseudo marginalization. He described already being quiet about his beliefs to everybody in his life except his wife. There is a bit of a feeling of like you can't really tell the people around you, especially if they're religious, because there's often a lot of hostility towards non-believers. It's like this idea that it's kind of evil. And I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to say it's full-blown marginalization presently. It definitely has been, but uh, I think this is part of why atheists often very big on religious freedom. Just like that's the only way we can feel free to have our beliefs, I think. And it's not this idea that, oh, they want to get rid of all religion. This is again an instance, I think, of every accusation is a confession, because religious believers often need to do that. In fact, religions often have a need, feel a need to get rid of other religions. Things like the Spanish Inquisition come to mind, or far more recently in some parts of the world. For example, I know in Iraq in the 50s, all the Jews were expelled. Now that might be anti-Semitism and not just religious conformity, but there are also conflicts between Sunni and Shiite Muslims in that part of the world. It just tends to be a thing that religions are about. Is everyone must believe or be a believer at the very least. I know those sound like the same thing, but they feel different, at least a little bit.
It's likely a lot of you have heard me say that I care more about increasing our compassion and empathy in these discussions and helping atheists cope with deconversion than I care about just creating more atheists. Enter Kent Hovind. Kent, the man I used to follow and revere, has discovered my content and on his own YouTube channel posted a video responding to and trying to convert me back.
That must
The
have been
video he chose to
so
respond to.
weird. You know, this would be like if you grew up watching Mr. Rogers and he made a response video to you talking about how you like, well, as you'll see, being very aggressive and talking about how you're basically basically brainwashed and stupid. Like that would be so wild. And that's kind of the position we're in. Maybe closer to a Bill Nye than a Mr. Rogers, but I can't imagine how that feels. It must have been so weird.
Was my deconversion story. As you probably realize, this is really strange for me. He's acknowledged me personally for the first time, but as an adversary, when for the majority of my life, I was his follower. The response is... It's something that would have shocked teenage Christian me, but it's what adult atheist me has just come to expect from him. Now, I've chosen to go about my response to him differently than you might expect. I'm not going to try to counter Kent's points. This is for two reasons.
There's not much point of that.
One, Kent doesn't really argue against my points in his response. He mostly just disagrees with me, says something condescending, states his opinion, and then moves on. There's really no point in arguing for me since Kent isn't really arguing with me in the first place, but simply contradicting me.
That's not what he does.
Two, virtually no one who agrees with Kent's videos is going to be swayed by me defending my points here, because even Kent himself felt no need to actually counter them in his video. People likely aren't going to change sides on the issue of evolution because of this exchange, so I'm not going to act like they are. Instead, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to discuss how one's approach can make or completely destroy one's effectiveness in communicating with others.
Kind of a
Basically, Kent's video is an example of what people do wrong when it comes to building bridges and persuading people. I think Kent really only responds to popular atheist channels for the sake of getting views and remaining relevant. He's just using me. So I'm going to use Kent's video, but for a more important purpose, to encourage better discourse by showing and discussing examples of what not to do when trying to persuade people and build constructive dialogue. His video is over an hour long, so I'll just be hitting the highlights. The link to his full video is in the description. Watch it if you'd like to see if I'm fairly representing him in this video. However, if you do want to minimize the algorithm boost he'll get from you, then just don't engage beyond watching the video. Don't dislike or comment or whatever. You can also watch it on a higher speed to decrease the amount of total watch time he'll get from you. Please
don't do that with me. Watch me on half speed. All right, maybe quarter speed if you can do it, and watch it multiple times. Just keep it on repeat all day. It's the only thing that your computer should be doing is multiple accounts and multiple windows, watching me as slow as possible.
Respectful, however you decide to engage. Now on to the highlights.
Okay, brace yourselves. Even if you watched with me on Friday and you think you're ready for Kent Hovind, Friday was Kent Hovind on his best behavior. That was him in a context where he was trying to look good for the camera. Now we're trying to look good for his followers. So whatever decorum you thought that he had in that previous debate, even if that seems like a really weird word to use, is gonna go right out the window. All right, he's not gonna be like just hurling slurs, because people like this, especially in like very very Christian circles, like to present as very wholesome. So even cursing is gonna be out the window. I just mean in terms of approach. Get ready. Friday was Kent being nice.
Kent Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland. Welcome to Whack an Atheist Wednesday with Dr. Kent, the science gent, even with the stethoscope.
Like, look at this. He's like the pretending like he's a scientist. First of all, stethoscope is for doctors, not for scientists. This is like just appropriating the language of education to seem more credible, and it's obvious even from how he's dressed. It's kind of weird to me that people fall for this. Like, I don't know. What has to be going on in your head for you to be like, yeah, that's legit.
Now, is it official? Yeah, okay. Tonight we're going to Whack an Atheist. We've been looking high and low for one functioning brain cell.
And he's looking to whack an atheist, not argue,
there's
right?
no God.
A few seconds in, and the tone toward atheists is adversarial and condescending to the point of bigotry. If you want to convince people of something, saying that your show whacks them and that they lack brain cells isn't going to help.
Now, of course, Kent doesn't want to convince anybody. Well, kind of. The people he wants to convince are, in a way, this is a little bit preaching to the choir. The this is the appearance of being open to argument. This is the kind of Crowder change my mind. It's pretending like an argument could be presented, like you are open to argument and evidence, done so that you appear like, oh, like clearly there's nothing that can stand up to this, because if there was, I would be convinced. But he's obviously not. Instead, it's one part optically appearing that way, and then the people I think he would be trying to convince are the people closer to him. If there's a continuum, if there's a spectrum of like fundamentalism to atheism, he's not trying to capture people at the atheist end. He's trying to capture people just shy of where he already is landed, or where his followers are already landed. Just like pull in people who are not very far away. And something like this, the demonstration of strength, especially to the right, which religious fundamentalism tends to be very right wing. Strength is very important to someone in that position, where argument isn't. So that's what he's trying to do. The kind of convincing he's doing is very different than the kind of convincing Andrew, I remember now, his name is Andrew, genetically modified skeptic, is looking for. Or at least I think it's Andrew. Yeah, he says he's referred to as Drew. Yeah, it's Drew. Drew is his name. We got there. We figured it out. We're geniuses.
He continues with this rhetoric in several other places.
But there's not one functioning brain cell on those who think there is no God, and we're going to whack another one tonight. Sweetly in Christian love. This is Dr. Kent, the science.
This is, again, just the power and display of dominance. That's all he's looking to do here. And like I said, this is Kent minus the small amount of decorum he is able to muster for actual debates.
Science gent. Okay, the Bible says, in the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. Some people.
So we have that mixture of, look, I'm actually really, well, it's like that biblical knowledge is really important when you're talking with fundamentalists, but simultaneously with that appeal to dominance. I'll whack your butt, I guess, if you're an atheist that is void of understanding. The irony is overwhelming.
That's the only way they learn. My dad would say some people listen with their ears and some people listen with their nose. Had some bullies picking on me in fourth grade.
Yeah, so now we have, like, not exactly calls to violence, but allusions to violence being what you have coming, or what you deserve, or what you need.
Smite a scorner, and the simple will beware. So we're going to smite an atheist again tonight. We're going to whack another one.
When your goals and tone are best explained through analogies which describe violence, there's a problem. Why would anyone think that saying, hey, I disagree with you, so come listen to me insult, belittle, and make allusions to punching you in the face and see if you change your mind,
well, of course he's not trying to convince
anyone
you
of anything?
It's like whack-a-mole. We'd like to get one of these games for our Dinosaur Adventure.
And to be clear, I think Drew knows that, right? Like, Drew already is open to saying, like, he's not really arguing with me. Kent isn't trying to convince Drew. He is making a show of trying to convince Drew. I can only speculate as to the reasons. My guess is that Kent would be aware that Drew knows too much to ever be fooled by him again. So there's no point. Instead, it's making this show of trying to convince him so that he can be like, well, look how dumb people have to be. I've even made arguments. But the arguments are for the people around him, not for anyone else. Something that people have talked about a lot is that debates are not to convince the other person, it's to convince the audience. However, in this particular case, Kent is looking at a specific sliver of the audience that he's trying to convince. It's the people who are just barely not completely in Kent's camp, and to draw further in the people who are already in the room, basically, because you'll hear other people laughing. He has his live audience to sate his ego.
And by the way, if you know of one for sale, Whack-A-Mole will label each of the moles with a different atheist picture and name
His,
on
like,
there.
minions at Dinosaur Adventureland. You can see the logo
Here
in the
comes
background.
Dawkins again. Bam! Okay.
Imagine if I said the atheist community of Austin, where I'm a board member, wants to get a whack-a-mole game where each mole is labeled as a different Christian, because apparently hitting Christians with hammers is fun. Would that be hateful and dehumanizing? Yes, and that's why we wouldn't do it. I'm going to skip to where he starts addressing my video. To keep this as concise as possible, I will be skipping over a lot of parts where my video is played within his video.
I agree
Remember,
with Drew.
this
Like,
response of mine
the attitudes towards atheists can often slip into bigotry. It's just kind of, it feels like a weird bigotry because it's on a characteristic that, well, for one, is very easy. Like, it's not obvious in the same way that being part of the LGBT community is, you can theoretically pass, but it's also one that is fully ideological. It is, in a sense, a choice. You can choose to act like a Christian or whatever. So it feels very weird to call it one, but I mean, as Drew points out with this, the guy's alluding to violence being the appropriate response to atheists. Come on.
Mine isn't about arguments, because neither is Kent's response. It's about his approach.
Okay, Drew. I just picked randomly one of the ones you did here.
Randomly. I don't think it was
This
random
is exactly
whatsoever,
why
but
I'm
sure.
an atheist. You have 377,000 views on this one. Let's listen to this and insert Kent Hovind's comments.
I started college in 2012, and my beliefs were not challenged in any way until I took an
Oh yeah, it's kind of an older video of his, so very echoey audio. Not to compete with my incredibly high quality mic audio from my headset. You really can't compete with this kind of technologically advanced crisp audio. It's impossible.
astronomy class in summer of 2014. The professor there was a devoted Christian, and while he constantly encouraged his students to embrace Christian ideas, he didn't teach the universe was created in 6 days about 6,000 years ago like most fundamentalists believe. I won't bore you with too many details, but in that class...
Okay, Drew, before we go too far, I would like you to find that teacher, and I will debate you and that teacher simultaneously. Half my brain tied behind my back.
I mean, what would really be the difference? How much of a contribution is the entirety of your brain, dude? But, this is kind of a weird position of like, this is like kind of infighting, right? His professor is a Christian, is a believer, just, doesn't believe in the literal 6-day creation. And there are a lot of people who view the creation myth as allegorical or poetic or just not literal, right? Like, oh, it's, 7 days, but, a day is just so you could understand it, you, the human watching it, You could even argue that without the concept of time, days don't make sense, and all this creation was before the advent of time, and it still doesn't work, but there are a lot of people who are very thoroughly believers who don't believe in this 6-day creation and can make pretty reasonable arguments against it. But I guess when you're this fundamentalist, you can't excuse anything like that. I don't know if Kent goes as far as to say that Christians who don't believe in 6-day creation aren't Christian. There are some who might. I don't know if he goes that far, but clearly he has issues with people who even from his worldview, are at worst misguided Christians. I don't know. It's very weird.
Okay?
But you have to
If
be
he is
all
believing
the
that
way
the Earth is
indoctrinated,
billions
I guess.
of years old because of the starlight question, I think we can very adequately answer that. I do on my DVD number 7 of the seminar series.
And there's the plug. Remember, he's shilling for his audience. This is thoroughly theater, not even the pretense of argument, and that's why he's gonna be like, oh, you want to see why? I'm not gonna give you a reason. I'm gonna point you at a thing of mine you can buy, so I can make some money off of you trying to figure it out.
About my question answer. How do we tell the distance to the stars? If somebody destroyed your faith in Christianity over that topic, son, you have swallowed hook,
And of course
line,
he's
and
not
sinker
listening, because
a
that's not
load
what
of
you said
garbage.
either.
Okay.
Which he'll
I actually
mention.
remember bringing up Kent's points from that lecture to my astronomy professor after class one day. He took me seriously and kindly spoke with me about why he didn't teach those ideas.
So this is something that I've seen come up a lot as far as whether people should, like, in the debate bro versus video essayist discourse of that, oh, debates aren't a good way of convincing people because they're so aggressive and you often need to sit down and be very gentle with people. I think that's true when you're trying to convince that person, but obviously in debates you're trying to convince the audience generally, and often that needs to be done in private. It's something I have liked attempting with people I have met before, of you've been told a lot of things. I happen to think differently. I can gently explain to you why I think the things I do, and you don't necessarily have to agree, but at least understand my position. Sure, sure. But that's not what's being attempted here. And you can see that in a one-on-one situation, that is much more. The person you're talking to is going to be much more amenable to listening.
One thing he never said, which was definitely for the best, was that he could debate both me and Kent Hovind with half his brain tied behind his back. I'm also glad he didn't say or do any of the following things to me either.
You got brainwashed, and we can unbrainwash you. You got brainwashed. You weren't paying attention, son. You got brainwashed, son. Bring them on. Bring them on down here. You got brainwashed.
Well, you see stuff like this,
and
it makes you
somebody
realize
to whack
he
you
has
with
to
some
be
real
thinking
science
this
and
into
explain
actual
it to
debates.
you. Drew,
He's just
pay attention, boy.
just acting like like he can make a reasonable.
Yeah,
he's not thinking, oh, you have an
off.
argument that's bad.
Luckily,
he's just
my
like,
professor
you got
knew
brainwashed.
that kindness, patience, and well-sourced arguments would be sufficient to inform my perspective. He was a Christian who showed me actual compassion and love, rather than Kent's so-called Christian love.
Later, in the fall of 2014, I began taking my first semester of a 2-semester class in statistics and scientific research.
Actually, it's possible the audio isn't even from this video. That's why it's echoey. It's possible it's from Kent watching it on a monitor and then recording it, because you can see from a lot of the stuff he does is some boomer ass shit. He has a TV to display his PowerPoint slide with like 1,000 slides in it, because he doesn't separate them by topic. It's just add another slide to a thing, and then we'll remember what slides are what. He sells DVDs. He has asked his followers to make a YouTube. It's possible that he literally just recorded his TV that had the video playing.
How to avoid cognitive biases, avoid fallacious reasoning, isolate variables, establish causal link.
No, it did not, Drew. It didn't teach you how to think logically and to avoid fallacious reasoning. You fell for hook, line, and sinker. The fallacious reasoning is believing in evolution. That class didn't teach you a thing, son. If that's what you came out of that believing that you came from a rock.
And of course, Kent's not listening
4.6 billion years ago, which came.
This isn't even pretending to approach things in good faith. He's not listening. Drew didn't say any of this, and Drew will say it.
From a dot of nothing exploding. Drew, talk about fallacious reasoning. Evolution is the dumbest theory in the world, and you gave up Christianity for that. And you're trying to encourage other people to give it up.
So, oh yeah, this is another amazing Kentism. So Kent argues that there are 5 kinds of evolution. 4 out of the 5, oh no, I think 3 out of the 5 have nothing to do with evolution. This is Big Bang Theory, this is abiogenesis, and I forget what the other one is. Then he separates evolution into microevolution and macroevolution, with, of course, his own definitions of each. Microevolution being speciation, and macroevolution being speciation to the point of recognizably different types of things. So, like, he would accept speciation from wolf to different types of dogs, but he won't accept speciation from dinosaurs to birds, for example. It's very weird. So the came from a rock thing, since you're asking in chat, is abiogenesis, is that the earth was rock. There were more things, but he'll just say rock. And then life came from that. But of course, abiogenesis has absolutely nothing to do with evolution. My understanding is there have been breakthroughs made as to possible ways that abiogenesis occurred. But as far as I know, there's not a consensus as to the first life, how the first life came about. But he conflates that as like, oh, well, the Earth was a rock, and then life came from it, and so it came from rock. And he's been explained to why that makes no sense, but obviously he's never going to pay attention to this. So that's why he's saying like, oh, they taught you came from a rock, and that's evolution, and you threw out Christianity for that. It's kind of intentionally ridiculous on his face. He does this all the time, of like misconstruing things in a weird way so it sounds ridiculous intuitively, even though it's not what anyone believes. And when you describe it in a way that anyone does believe it, it does actually make sense, even if it's not intuitive. Yeah, Kent's quite a character, and I'm happy to explain his ridiculousness, because it's so funny to me.
You need really whack, son. Come on down to Dinosaur Adventureland.
Oh, show the place. Come on down to my theme park. Pay me money. Again, he's gonna pepper in the pay me stuff. Oh, disingenuous puts it mildly. Yeah. He's I I am happy to call him an open grifter. Yeah, it's he's maximally dishonest. If you want the thorough review of that, just watch the VOD from Friday, and you'll also get introduced. You'll also get to see Aaron Ra, who's a cool guy. So I'll point you to that video. I'll try not to go over too much of that same stuff again, but this is a follow up to that. That's why we're here.
Hitting an effigy of your interlocutor is obviously not helping you reach anyone. But beyond that, Kent makes an even more damning mistake here. It's the most common mistake I see theists make when trying to convert atheists. Never did I say in my video that I believed in evolution at this point in my story, but Kent assumes it because, and here's the mistake, he's not actually listening. He's just trying to have a comeback. The clip from my video he just played disproves the assertion he made, as it says,
"Once I finished that class, I stopped believing in a young universe and six-day creation, although I still believe in the inerrancy of the Bible and that God created all life in its current form. I was still a fundamentalist in every way except for my belief in the ancient universe."
So, I think this is a little bit of not understanding Kent, which is a little surprising because Kent's clear about this, and Drew watched his stuff going on. He thinks that that's evolution. The Big Bang. He calls that like the first kind of evolution or something like that. That all life came from a speck of dust or came from nothing or whatever. So yes, he thinks that you have now accepted evolution, but obviously you have said explicitly that you don't, with an understanding of what evolution actually is, as opposed to what Kent says it is.
Progress can be made without listening to your interlocutor. The straw manning and insulting he does after this doesn't help either.
As a result of my newfound critical thinking skills, I stopped believing.
You don't have any thinking skills at all. If you believe you came from a rock, which came from a dot of nothing, I know they taught you. You're a real good thinker now.
Someone in Kent's audience then makes this comment.
It's just amazed me that they have to. Not only they can't just speak about atheism, it's like he's attacking religion too. He's attacking Christianity.
That's wild that they think believing a different thing is an attack, where Kent is literally over there like bonk bonk atheist. Oh man, yeah, it's the rock and the speck of nothing, right? It came from a rock that came from nothing. That's the Big Bang and abiogenesis. Like I think that's 1 and 3 of his types, but I forget what 2 is. It's something really weird. It makes no sense, so it makes it difficult to keep track of. I tried to Google it, but there's no like list I could find anywhere of what his 5 kinds are. He mentions it in some debates, and I'm not willing to watch them just to find that.
If you want to have a productive conversation, you can't have this double standard.
Of course he doesn't.
This video is on my own deconversion story. All my other videos explore ideas and explain my opinions and arguments. Never do I personally attack individuals, people as enemies.
Actually, I think this is a good point in the video to talk about something that's coming up a lot, is intent and how to listen to people. How to listen to people is something that I think people struggle with a lot, myself included. It's pretty difficult, especially because people often mean things. When people say stuff, there's implied meaning, and often that implied meaning doesn't come across the same way to everyone because of the methods of implication are going to vary. That said, while I think that what Drew is saying out loud is inaccurate towards what Kent is doing, because Kent is not trying to do what he said he was, right? There's this issue of intent, and so he's saying like, oh, you're not going to convince anyone because Drew thinks that Kent is trying to convince people, or more accurately him. Kent's not trying to do that, right? He's trying to convince his own audience and so on and so forth. I also don't think Drew doesn't know that. I think he knows that, and I think what he's doing is presenting as if he's taking Kent at his word and demonstrating the problems there as a method of basically acting like he doesn't know how dishonest Kent is and letting it just come out naturally, which I think is reasonable. But this is an added difficulty when watching videos and stuff, is the differing intent from different people, and that they're not talking to each other. So to understand Kent, you have to understand who he's trying to convince, and then the same thing with what Drew is saying about Kent, he's not like I don't want to say it's dishonest. I think it's putting on a show to express the additional honesty. Oh, it's like that line from I don't think it's originally from V for Vendetta. I think they're quoting something else, but that's where I learned it from. Where it's that actors will use lies to tell the truth. That's basically what's happening. Is he's behaving a certain way to demonstrate what's actually going on. But it makes it difficult to talk about these kinds of things because there are multiple layers of interpretation going on and how to listen to each one of them. So I'll try not to talk so much about Drew's claims that Kent isn't being effective at convincing him because I think he knows that Kent's not trying. So I'll try to move past that and try to mention when Kent is being dishonest in a way that doesn't that Drew doesn't also mention.
Kent, on the other hand, I think we could say is on the attack. He does target individuals. He does treat people as enemies. Correct. Saying that I'm inexcusably on the attack, but still condoning Kent's approach is a ludicrous double standard.
It's really interesting what's seen as an attack from places like this. I think often with reactionary types, and I think fundamentalists have a maybe tendency is not even the right word, have a susceptibility towards reactionary thinking, is that because you're not actually under attack, but you feel victimized because you don't have everything you want, there's this tendency towards acting like non-attacks are attacks. Like saying, I was learning to think critically. How's that an attack on anyone? Literally, how's that an attack on? He's just describing what he's able to do now as opposed to what he was able to do before. You could even argue, if you are a fundamentalist Christian, that you are able to think critically. You're probably not, to be fair. That is an attack. You can take that as an attack. I accept these terms. Whereas implying multiple times that violence should be done to Drew because he's a non-believer isn't an attack. It's this like insistence on being the victim, and so having to misunderstand, I guess, basic events that exist in the world. I really want to try to understand. I'm really trying to understand that one guy in Kent's crew who's complaining about Drew attacking Christians. It just where you have to be. This is actually, I think this is a concept that we were talking about before. Of oh yeah, we haven't really fleshed this out. I'm gonna have to get back to this because this is kind of a long one. But the idea of like what a person would have to believe, or what the world would have to look like for them to be correct, and I don't even know if debate is the right thing. Maybe even just like communication. We're gonna rename this communication. Because like really think about what the world would have to look like for for that guy to believe that Drew is attacking Christians with that statement, but Kent isn't attacking atheists. Or maybe it's that it's just okay to attack atheists. It's really weird to me, and to be honest, I don't think I've fully gotten a grasp of what's going on in that guy's head to justify that position.
Unfortunately, I see this double standard a great deal, both in evangelical circles and in the response video culture on both sides of this whole issue. It doesn't allow for productive discourse. I feel the need to summarize the next section of the video because Kent pauses me several times to do this. So next, my video discusses how I began to doubt the efficacy of the essential oils my family sold. I make no mentions of doubting Christianity at this point in the video.
Oh, right, the SpongeBob thing. I forgot to mention this. Why is it SpongeBob specifically? Kent likes to do this thing of like atheism, or more often evolution, is SpongeBob imagination stuff, because there's that imagination SpongeBob picture, and so that's why the evolution is SpongeBob. You have to be so deep in understanding Kent to get that. It's really weird. Yeah, I forgot that it doesn't make sense normally. I'm like, oh yeah, the SpongeBob thing, I get it. I was like, wait, people might not understand why he's bonking a SpongeBob. It's because it's imagination land. God, fucking Kent Hovind, dude.
But Kent, not even making an attempt to listen, inserts this.
If they got involved in something like that and it doesn't work, let's suppose that is quackery. You may be right, okay? Therefore, the Christianity's quackery?
Well, you didn't say that, right?
Critical thinking skills Come on, Drew.
At this point in my deconversion video, I hadn't made a single argument against belief in Christianity. I was still just giving context to the narrative. Yet it's almost as if Kent thinks he knows what's going on in my brain better than I do. He asserts that I'm making points that I'm not. This is the second biggest mistake I see theists make when trying to convert atheists. Instead of listening, they assert your point for you or claim to know your mind better than you. They say, you don't believe in God because of this reason? Well, that's not true. Here's the real reason.
This is especially bad with a group of people who, or I shouldn't say a group of people, with a position, I guess it is a group of people too, known as presuppositionalism. I've only seen one debate with a presuppositionalist. I wonder if that's because there aren't that many of them. It's also possible because presuppositionalism does not lend itself well to argumentation, but is the basic idea. I think it says somewhere in the Bible that everyone, the believer has lied, or the non-believer has lied in his heart to say that he isn't, or something like that. Basically, this idea that they presuppose everyone knows that God exists and is real, and that Christianity is true, and you have to be, and anyone who says otherwise is lying because they know otherwise. It is the most frustrating thing in the world to try to argue with, and even watching it was so infuriating, because what do you say? The person's just making up what you believe and assuming what's going on in your head, to the point where it's the only argument they'll make for the hour and a half debate, or however long it is. Oh my god. Like I said, I've only seen it once, and it was extremely painful, but this tendency, so frustrating, and it happens all the time from believers. Well, I shouldn't say all. Not every believer will do this, but lots of people who argue for religion, particularly Christianity, will make this assumption of what's going on in your head, irrespective of what you say.
That extremely common tactic exemplifies incredible, overwhelming arrogance.
It's true.
Not only are you asserting that you're
ones,
right, but you're also asserting that you know what others are thinking better than they do. Then you're discrediting that assumed thinking and awarding yourself a victory. The problem with that is, no one but you thinks an actual discussion of the issues happened. If you refuse to listen to others or meet their reasoning where they say it is, you're not just a useless evangelist. You're an obstacle to progress on the issues that you yourself care about.
And
unfortunately,
thinking,
Kent's listening gets even worse.
Even the
as
concept
the
of critical thinking.
Keep in mind that through all of this, my beliefs surrounding God and Christianity remain basically unchanged. Then things finally got shaken up for me again when I took a master's level.
This is also kind of interesting because you can tell Kent is live reacting to. I keep pausing on very unflattering frames of Drew. I'm sorry. That's not intentional, obviously. You can tell that Kent is live reacting, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it makes it clear that he's not paying attention either. When Drew goes on to say, "Oh, my beliefs are basically unchanged," but previously Kent is talking about how he doesn't believe anymore. Well, obviously that's not true. And if you had watched and then responded, which would have been more appropriate to something like this, if you're going to respond to arguments, which you claim to be wanting to do, then you would want to watch and then have a concise list of things to say. But also, part of why his videos are so long is to keep eyes on him. This happened with Aron Ra and Hovind a little bit after the debate that we watched on Friday, where Kent actually agreed to not exactly a written debate, more like a debate in video form, that they will respond to each other with competing response videos, which means that there's not a problem of interruption, there's not a problem of talking over each other or equal time. They can fully flesh out the ideas and make as many arguments as they want, and as strong an argument as they want, irrespective of what plays well. Sometimes the best arguments you just don't have time for in a debate, but in this way they would. The first thing that happened was I think Aron started with something like a either half hour or 45-minute video, and Kent's response was like 7 1-hour videos. On top of all that, when Aron responded and just was like, "I'm obviously just gonna take clips out of this," Kent complained that he didn't play the arguments in their entirety, that he didn't play all of what Kent said, because what he's after, I mean, obviously he doesn't care about the arguments, and obviously he doesn't want to care about the debate, But what he's after is the view time, the eyes on him. And it finally made sense of why he would agree to such a long form debate where he could be easily discredited and disproven. It's because he wanted to monopolize the time in the weird way that it occurs by responding with such ridiculous length of, like, for real, it was something. I think it was like 7 1-hour videos in response to a 45-minute starter. What's Aaron gonna do? Then respond to it? Even if he only responds for like 30 seconds for every 2 hours, or I shouldn't. Sorry, 30 minutes for every 2 hours. We're still looking at a response video that's over 9 hours. Then Kent's going to respond with more than 24 hours. It's ridiculous, but he just wants the eyes on him. He just wants people keep watching his stuff, and this is why he has an hour-long response to this very short video from Drew. And it's pretty unreasonable when someone does that, except, and the big exception here is when it's me and I can't shut the fuck up about what I'm watching, and it takes this long to get through this little of the video. We've been watching for 13 minutes and we're an hour into stream. I know I talked about other stuff, but even still, it's reasonable when I do it, and it's okay because I'm doing it honestly, and you can't disagree with that. I don't care.
Sexuality in mid-2015. There, I learned that there was a strong genetic component to homosexuality. That attempt.
Aha. Second Peter chapter 3.
I wasn't aware that Kent had a problem with homosexuality,
Drew,
but I guess it makes sense. He's a fundamentalist.
The scoffers are willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood and the coming judgment of God, and it's because of their lust. That's why they're ignorant. Read 2 Peter chapter 3 and sign your name in that one, Drew.
Something kind of interesting on this one.
Kent hears me say I think there's a genetic component to homosexuality, so he assumes I doubt Christianity because I'm gay.
So Drew will go on to say something very intelligent about this, if I remember correct. I'm pretty sure I remember what he says about it, but I want to add in something here. Something to note is that people watching with Kent are already laughing because they've already figured out, like, this is what's going to happen, and there's basically, it's not just, oh, he's gay and that's why you reject it. It's also being gay is something laughable, and something like, this is that kind of, oh, well, of course you're a sinner, of course you want to reject this. This is like kind of building one bigotry on another, and the homophobia, I think, shouldn't go without comment. Irrespective of, I don't remember if Drew mentions the homophobia part, but what he goes on to, we'll listen to what he says. It's pretty interesting.
The problem is I'm
Smart.
straight. I never say otherwise in that video.
He even mentions
and I
his
have
wife
a video with my wife on my channel, which I know Kent has come across because he does so in his very video. I think that clearly demonstrates a refusal to listen on Kent's part.
Yeah, that's true. But again, it's also access to. He gets to now fold in the homophobia he's assuming in the people around him, which is pretty clearly, like, he pretty clearly exists. They all started laughing about it ahead of him, like, haha, you're a gay, and yeah, it's pretty gross, even for Kent.
The conversion story, I begin talking about how I began to believe evolution is real. Kent argues some of my points, but ultimately his responses serve to motivate me to come debate him more than anything. He asks for proof of my claims, but when I mention my sources, it's totally ignored and he moves on. This is just about publicity rather than persuading me.
All of those points are false and are propagated out of a severe misunderstanding or total ignorance of evolution.
Okay, come show my audience and come show the whole world how ignorant I am about it, Drew. Come show everybody. Please come. Bring it on, okay? I'll pay your way down. I don't know where you live. I'll pay your way here.
Notice, it's not a debate challenge. This would be pretty typical in a review like this. Like, yeah, debate challenges will, like, talk over the internet or whatever, which would already be good for Kent, right? He gets views on his channel. But no, it's come to my theme park where I can, on top of getting your entrance fee, get more people in the door to show more people are coming to this thing, get more notoriety for my endeavor that I'm using to make money. It's just a grift.
Proof of all of this is in my sources. Finally, I understood that scientists were right about evolution.
You got brainwashed, son. They are not right about evolution, and the North Korean scientists are not right about communism, And the Iranian...
This is something he talks about all the time, and I would love to talk to someone who thinks this way and just really delve into that. Do people think that scientists do studies that show economic economic policies or economic systems are good? What it's such a cataclysmic misunderstanding of like 6 different things. He has to misunderstand what scientific papers show. They don't show like, hey, this is a good thing. They show things that they can demonstrate, like this effect occurs in these circumstances, kind of thing. Not like, yeah, I like socialism. 2, North Korean scientists are like spending their time on socialism. That's what or communism. That's what he thinks they're doing. That uh, oh my god, I lost track of because I got caught up with this just the overwhelming stupidity hitting me in waves. Uh, yeah, just like misunderstanding literally everything. Oh, and then of course to be like, oh, because someone just because to dismiss the concept of science in its entirety because, well, yeah, obviously you're going to come to that conclusion. You have this belief ahead of time, which another instance of every accusation is a confession. And coming from a guy who claims to have a doctorate, that's a, you know what? I don't, uh, I'm curious what his degree is supposed to be in. Doctorate in Christian education. Oh, okay. I was like, if he claims to be a scientist, he's wearing the fucking stethoscope and white lab coat. I was like, he claims to do science, and he thinks like, oh yeah, science is nonsense because you could just get whatever conclusion you want, but also it proves what I think. This is that double speak that happens all the time. Ken Ham did it constantly in his debate with Bill Nye, where it's this: you can't trust science for anything because the people who are doing it are super biased, with the sole exception of when I find something that supports my worldview that I came into it ahead of time, that I came in with ahead of time. Yeah. The stethoscope is absolute nonsense. Because he has a doctorate is maybe the idea. I'm a doctor, but even he doesn't claim he's a medical doctor. It's really weird. It's just the aesthetic. It's just the appearance of credibility. Yeah, exactly. It's a costume. Yeah, precisely.
Iranian scientists are not right about Islam, and they are not right that we all came from Iraq 4.6 billion years ago. I'm sorry, they're not right. You swallowed.
Now he's conflating even what he says about evolution, even the thing he thinks that we all came from Iraq 4.6 billion years ago. Even what you say is that people who or that evolutionists think that the universe began 4.6 billion years ago, but life's no, never mind. I got it mixed up. Nope. That's right. It's like the Earth is 4.6 billion years ago. A billion years old, but they don't say that that life started then. Yeah, it's really weird. Oh my! I would not advise this drinking game where you drink every time he says we came from Iraq. I guess in this you'll be fine, but if you watched Kent for any length of time, you will do serious damage to your internal organs with this drinking game. I would not recommend it.
Strained at a gnat and swallowed a camel.
And next up we have this classic bit of Kent's presentations, which I admittedly used to mimic to the annoyance of any non-Christians I came across. Like, I did this to people I didn't even know, and some people on the internet. Oh, God.
Go ahead.
Oh.
Oh, a box of nothing. Okay, good. Here, let's take a box of nothing and make it explode into something.
There's a part of me that just wants to be able to engage in bad faith when someone says something like this. It'd be like, I just did. There's a bunch of air in there. It's just like, I did it.
Anything. Let's see you make a BB out of just a BB, okay?
That bit relies on massive mischaracterization.
Or alternatively, do some magic trick, which and just be like, do you believe that? Like, do you think magic is real? Because they did that. Like,
and in an attempt to make a mockery of the opposition, prevents progress in the conversation altogether. People laugh as they're being encouraged to do little more than mock their supposed enemies. There's no regard for addressing accurate representations of anyone else's ideas. When I hear atheists mock blatant misrepresentations of theistic ideas, I'm ashamed. You guys know by now that I actively discourage that behavior all the time.
And he's right to do that, and he and I mentioned before, Cosmic Skeptic are very good about not doing things like this. I will say, in light of people like Kent, and lots of Christians do this, I also have the urge to start treating them with the same level of animosity. I want to say things like, well, yeah, you're always appealing to what a 5-year-old understands because anyone smarter than that wouldn't believe you. Then I fall into the angry atheist camp, and this is this kind of phenomenon where people won't see the inciting act of Kent being massively rude and disingenuous and openly hostile, but they will see the retort. It happens in a lot of circumstances, and it's just one of those, like, it kind of sucks to have to act like that's not happening, not be able to clap back, as it were, because there's this stereotype of you being angry. Well, sometimes there's reason to be angry, and people like Kent, well, they inspire such emotion.
As a leader in his community, I think Kent should take up the same responsibility. Moving on a bit in the video, I discuss a conversation I had with my family where I explained my view that personal spiritual experience is an unreliable means to determining truth.
Okay, let's go on here.
Questioned sufficiently and ended up retreating to a point where they defended all of their beliefs about essential oils with personal experience alone. I pointed out how personal experience was unreliable.
Drew, you are saying you switched over to evolution because of your personal experience.
Nope. This is another conflation. There's a necessity from creationists to act like there's no they have to act like there's no possible reason to believe in evolution on a factual level or a scientific level. So the only thing he has to act like, oh, you just had a personal experience and that's what convinced you, not the evidence and arguments and proof that exists, and like conflate in that way the way they believe, which is someone told me what a book says and I believed them uncritically and then proceeded to never think for my entire life. And that's how you get Kent Hovind. Well, people who believe Kent Hovind, I think he knows better and is lying to people. But I think the people who watch him, I mean, they basically have to be doing that.
Go look in the mirror, son.
This demonstrates once again that Kent has not been listening. I make it clear in the video that I came to accept evolution after a period of studying literature on the topic. No personal experience with natural selection or something influenced my position. And Kent,
so of course, like, to Kent, it's your learning is the personal experience, and he can't engage with the concepts that you learned or what you were taught. So to him, it's just like that is the personal experience. Obviously, I don't think Drew is unaware of this. Just to like fill in that little bit of a gap that exists of what Drew said and how Kent responded.
Should know that being close to the end of this video. I hope that viewers realize at this point that there was never an attempt made to understand my story or my positions.
This is what I was talking about earlier about, I think Drew knows that Kent wasn't trying to argue with him, and that Drew's approach was pretty good at demonstrating to anyone who would be watching by acting like Kent was attempting what he said he was. Now you can demonstrate the dishonesty and come to it. So I think he knows, and I think his approach is reasonable. But there is a little bit, like, if any confusion as to why he's acting like Kent is being honest, I think this is why.
Unfortunately, Kent isn't the only person guilty of this kind of thing. It happens in evangelical circles and in response videos on all sides all the time.
I prayed and told God that I needed to think about these questions freely, but that I thought if he was really there and Christianity was true, my honest inquiry would help me find him in every line of evidence I would explore.
He said, if you'll seek me with all your heart, you'll find him.
Here's another implication that Kent knows my mind and my life better than I do. I make it clear in this video that I have tried with all my might and all my heart to find God, especially the Christian God. Assuming superior knowledge of other people's thoughts may only be the second most common mistake I see evangelicals make in trying to convert atheists, but it's definitely the most annoying. And near blasphemously arrogant if you think about it.
One person I would point to is in this discussion, because I think he describes the phenomenon very well, is Matt Dillahunty, who also does a lot of atheist versus theist debates, and gets, I think, justifiably riled up when people make this claim, because this happens all the time. If you truly sought out God, you would have found him, and the fact that you haven't is proof that you didn't really believe. This is highly insulting, I think, but in addition to that, and in addition to what Drew was saying about assuming the knowledge of your own mind, it's a self-sealing belief. Only the people who agree with you could possibly have been honest. You can see immediately. It's impossible with that framework, it's impossible to be proven wrong. And while that seems like a strength of an argument to people without a lot of critical thinking skills, it is in fact a failure of an argument. An argument can only be true if it were possible for it to have been wrong, and then it wasn't. Like I said, Matt Dillahunty is a good person to listen to, because this comes up with him all the time. I know he did a debate with Ray Comfort. For those of you who don't know, he's the banana man, the guy who was like, look, the bounty of nature, the banana is made perfectly to fit in the human hand, pretending like bananas weren't biologically modified by farmers and other people to better suit humans, as opposed to how they existed before any sort of genetic modification. But in that, he covers it a lot, and it's really infuriating. I really don't know what to do about it other than to lay out the thing they'll never listen to and demonstrate why that argument is absolutely absurd.
Next up, Kent tries to get personal with me.
It's sad to see that you have turned this way, Drew. I'm here to help. I bet your parents are going to watch this and say, Drew, would you please listen to that guy? This is, of course, all show,
right? Like, this is all...
I don't know who they are. Tell
to pretend like he's
they're
actually
probably broken-hearted over what you did. You gave up Christianity to believe you came from a rock? You think this is your grandpa? Use your head, son.
I shouldn't have to tell anyone that dragging someone's family into an argument is not a good way to try to persuade them of anything. I won't say any more than this out of respect for my parents, but I highly doubt they've seen this video. If they did, I can assure you that they'd be disgusted that a man that they trusted to teach their child about God's creation and to set an example of godliness would stoop so low as to treat a wayward young man, someone who's strayed from Christ, with the hatred that Kent has displayed here. My parents are amazing people, and they know that to help or even just persuade someone, one often has to show long-suffering, love, and compassion, not bigotry. I'll wrap up my review of this video's highlights and Kent's behavior with a final clip, which I think contrasts the attitude of someone who listens with the attitude of someone who obviously doesn't.
I decided to temporarily go off any media that could influence my thinking. When I felt a bit more clear-headed, I would end that media blackout. The media blackout served two purposes. One, I knew that if I stopped believing, my whole family would tell me that it was because I blindly followed some worldly person, so I needed to make sure that...
Whoa. Didn't you blindly follow some astronomy teacher in your Christian college? Whoever the guy was ought to be fired, by the way, for teaching that garbage in a Christian school.
In my explanation of why I refrained from consuming any relevant media surrounding atheism and Christianity for a while, I demonstrate that I thoroughly understood the thinking of my evangelical peers. The assertion that I just blindly followed some worldly person was the first thing said to me when I came out as an atheist. I totally called it. In this very video, Kent's assertion that I did just that, even after going through my entire deconversion story, shows that my understanding of evangelical thinking was so solid that it had effective predictive power.
I mean, this is the fundamentalist creationist NPC dialogue tree, right? It's, you know, you got to hit the major talking points. It's led astray by a worldly person, you got brainwashed, it's a religion, I know your mind better than you. They're always going to say all of them. It's just hitting the checklist, because no thoughts, just vibes, right? There's nothing going on in Kent's into money and the list of pre-recorded responses.
Meanwhile, Kent has refused to listen so hard that he doesn't even see that his comments are lending me credibility. After this point in the video,
well, they would
I
if
talk
anyone
about
was listening
seeking out
authentically.
answers to philosophical questions surrounding God. Kent doesn't really address any of those questions and keeps trying to bring the conversation back to evolution, even though that's irrelevant to the portion of the video he's viewing. If you want to see that for yourself, watch his full video and see if I've represented that accurately. Please do set a good example for others if you choose to engage with his video in any way. Now,
I would recommend what Drew already recommended. Just don't engage with Kent Hovind. Views, aid his channel. Comments, aid his channel. Reactions with likes or dislikes, aid his channel. Don't. Like, in addition to don't harass him, don't engage at all. The only thing you can really do, because with someone like this, because his only interest is getting eyes on him, is trying to make sure that he doesn't get those eyes. Those include your own, so don't go watch his video to confirm what's going on. That includes others, so I wouldn't be opposed necessarily towards platforming restrictions on people who will openly lie like this. Though with Kent, he probably wouldn't get caught up in anything like that. It's probably not that bad where he should be banned necessarily. But just like cutting the audience out from under him would be the best thing to do about him. Unfortunately, it's very difficult because grifts are hard to break, especially with people who are raised to be unable to think critically. This is a kind of a pet peeve of mine, is that critical thinking, logic, uh, how to listen to arguments and how to is not really taught well, at least in American schools, at least in what I've seen of them. Even the best of what I've seen taught to people wasn't very good, and so people are left for the most part to educate themselves on this, and it's highly uh, unreliable. Even people who I saw doing competitive debate were not necessarily going to be good at critical thinking, even though that should be the chief skill in use there. And it's a real problem. And people who will believe hucksters like Kent are kind of the example as to why. I'm not going to finish with the rest of this conclusion. There's a lot of discussion that is a little outside of what I want to cover. If you'd like to see it, I would recommend engaging with people like Genetically Modified Skeptic. If you want to see the rest of his video, just go watch it on his channel and give him a view. He already has 1.4 million on this one, and I don't see a reason why he shouldn't have more. Maybe some likes, maybe some subscriptions. He's a cool guy. That is another mechanism of getting eyes away from Kent, is prioritizing eyes on people who are not him. Some amount, obviously the way that the YouTube algorithm works is shrouded in mystery. No single person knows exactly. I'm not even sure if there's still an issue of. It used to be the case that giving a dislike would have the same impact on a video's likelihood to be recommended as giving a like or as a comment. They're all considered just engagement. I don't know if that's still the case, but there is one thing that is very clear, is that when you watch videos, you get recommended similar videos. That's why I have PragerU videos on my recommended page, because I watched some. Oh, of course, there's not one here, but watching people who are very much not Kent, very good for getting eyes away from Kent. That said, that's all I really want to talk about with this video today. And we went longer than I thought we would, because I do not stop talking, and you can't stop me, no matter how hard you try. The other stuff I want to talk about is completely off of this subject, and instead I want to talk a little bit about Magic the Gathering, which some of my viewers already know I have an interest in, and there were just a couple of things that I thought were kind of cool, worth talking about. For one, I was able to judge a Pioneer tournament over the weekend. This was an RCQ, so this is a regional championship qualifier. They do not require a certified judge for this event, so it's not a problem that I am no longer a judge. I used to be before they moved over to the Judge Academy, but that's not a problem. They didn't need to have anyone there. Having me was just a bonus, and made sure that it was run a little bit better. It was a pretty cool event. I just wanted to share my thoughts on it for anyone who is interested, it was a 64-player event, which for me as a judge is a little bigger than what I'm used to handling. From what I've seen, judges tend to agree to judge tournaments of 32 players or less without a floor judge available. I used to pretty regularly judge tournaments of like 40 to 45 people by myself, and that was pretty doable. It was tough, but doable. 64 by myself is a huge ask. That said, the shop where that was holding the event anticipated this because it was the same shop where I judged a 64-player event prior, the only other time I have, and they saw how overwhelmed I was. So they went out of their way, went really above and beyond to make sure I had all the help I needed. They had all of their employees on hand, whereas normally they would have half the staff. One of them was also a judge in the previous judge system, and I should just go to my full face view because we don't need my thing. Was also a judge in the previous system, so he was effectively my floor judge to the day for the day, in addition to the other employees helping me with like deck checks and stuff. So they did a lot of work, and I think things ran really smoothly because of that. And the fact that it was 64 players ended up not being a huge problem. It was kind of cool. I got to judge a format that I don't really pay attention to all that much, which is Pioneer. Nowadays, I'm mostly a Commander player, uh, and Legacy is a format that I enjoy watching a lot, so I keep up in that sense, in a viewer perspective, not as a player. And it was cool to see a format I wasn't super familiar with. A few fun judge calls of the day, or I guess I just kind of want to talk about like some of the cool stuff that happened over the course of the day. Normally, with like a 40 to 45 player tournament, when going over deck lists in the first round, I'll find like 2 people who have some problem with their deck list or other that I have to go over. This time we had like 6, which doesn't seem like a lot until you realize, well, I'm supposed to check. I'm supposed to deck check people with problems on their deck list as soon as possible, and I obviously can't check all 6 of those in the first round, especially because I'm only supposed to have 10 minutes. Or I guess in the second round, I'm only supposed to have 10 minutes to do all of that. So I was like deck checking people between the rounds, just like try to get it all taken care of. A few neat judge questions during the day that was to talk about past that. One was with the card. Actually, let's go to the, because we're going to pull up Gatherer. Uh, yeah. So someone was playing a deck with Gigantha the Wellspring as their companion, which requires do not like this art. Which requires that no card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol in its cost. And there was some question of like, oh, with modal double-faced cards, something like what's a good example? Well, I guess the first one that comes to mind is not exactly played, but Cosima the Voyager. Uh, there are 2 different mana costs on it. Obviously, these ones would both fulfill Gigantha's requirement. But if the backside had multiple mana symbols, would that be okay? Actually, let me resize this so you can see the whole thing. Would that be okay? As it turns out, it is. With modal double face cards, you just check the front for checking things like companion. So it was kind of a neat thing to come across. There's also one there was one kind of funny judge call where someone took control of their opponent's old growth troll, then sacrificed it to an effect, and the owner of the old growth troll was under the impression that they would get the trigger, which is when it dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield as or enchantment with enchant forest you control, and some stuff for it gives the forest some more stuff. And while it seems this is a pretty common thing of like, okay, well, if someone gains control of an opponent's creature and then it dies, obviously the controller gets the death trigger. That's who always gets a trigger on a creature, is the controller. The owner of Old Ghost Troll was giving me some pushback on this, so I double check. It's literally the first. I don't know if you can read this. I hope it's not too small. It's literally the first ruling on Old Growth Troll. If you control but don't own it, you get the trigger. For what it's worth, the person who took control of the Old Growth Troll, that's a mouthful. Took control of the Old Growth Troll. Uh, didn't have any force to enchant. It was just that it doesn't come back at that point, or it returns to the battlefield, uh, and then is put in the graveyard for state-based effects because it's an aura with no. We won't get into that part, but it's literally the first ruling on here, and I'm trying to explain to the other player, and he's like, "I'm pretty sure I got that the opposite ruling before," and I was like, "Well, if I didn't say this, but my thought was, if you did, that judge needs to have a talking to because that's not how that works. Even a cursory glance, like you should even a basic understanding of the rules should lead you to the conclusion I reached, but if cursory glance will give you the ruling I got to, and it was just kind of funny trying to explain to this player why it doesn't work that way, and they seemed not to really, I don't know, maybe not buy it is the wrong way to put it, but they seem to be pushing back. I was telling them, like, you can argue with me later. You didn't want to do it. There's always a little bit of uncertainty with answering judge calls like that, of wondering if a player is just trying to argue with me into giving what would be a bad ruling, but what's something that's beneficial to them. I'm not accusing that player of that, but it's just one of those, like, I always have to wonder with stuff like this. So I kept to my ruling, but it was kind of interesting that it came up. Another thing that came up was, like, does the backside of an invasion have the same mana cost and mana value as the front? So, like, for Invasion of Amonkhet, does Lassotep Convert have mana value of 3 or 0? This only really comes up for two reasons. One, it's a new card type, and two, modal double face cards don't work the same way that other cards that have a backside used to. Any card that transforms now uses the front side to determine things like mana cost and mana value. You can effectively think of this mana value being, or the mana cost being, on the backside as well. But because it's new and because modal double face cards don't work like that, there was some confusion. This is a pretty easy one. Just a quick check made it clear. Yes, it uses the front side. I will admit, I did goof on one judge call. I didn't give a bad ruling so much as I just made a mistake during the course of the call where one player, people who know me personally will know who this person is. I'll only say his first name is Thomas. So if you know who I am, if you know me personally, you know who I'm talking about. It felt bad that it was additionally up for a friend of mine. He asked me for the oracle text on a card. That card happened to be, let me see if I remember the name of the card. Graveyard Trespasser. I did remember. Happened to be this one. It's not super important. Asked for the oracle text. I showed the oracle text on the card, which I was a little surprised at because newer cards, the oracle text should be the same as the printed text, and in this case, I believe it is. I didn't go over it to check. The big thing is he wanted clarification on Ward, so I found the rulings on how Ward works and explained it to him, and then I put the card back down on the table. Now, when I say I put it back down, that's not where it was in the first place. The way he held it, because I'm standing above, it seemed like it was in full view of both players, and I thought it was his opponent's card because most of the time when you ask for the oracle text on a card, it's your opponent's card. You need to know how their stuff works. You're usually familiar with how your stuff works. None of that excuses anything so much as explains what happened. Explains what I was thinking. So I put the card back down on the table, except it was in the player's hand. And so I gave his opponent some information about the contents of his hand. He came and he told me later that it didn't have any impact on the game, but I felt pretty bad. I don't like, obviously I don't like making mistakes like that, and it kind of sucks, especially with it's a friend. I shouldn't do it. That's the kind of mistake I try to avoid, irrespective. It's not the friend part doesn't matter. It's just the extra feel bad of like, oh, also, I see this guy regularly, and sorry, I gave your opponent extra information. I did apologize, and as I said, he told me it didn't end up mattering, but it still happened. It was a kind of interesting thing because I was noticing more than usual during the tournament kind of the tendencies of a tournament like this, because the majority of what happens is at the start of every round when people are like, oh, my opponent's not here, or can I use the restroom, or whatever else. But then also that's when I deck check. And so other than that part of every round, most rounds were pretty consistent. There wasn't a lot going on. You just watch some games of Magic, not a ton. Respond to a judge call every here and again. But there's a huge flurry of activity early when you have to collect all the deck lists, then count the 64 deck lists to make sure that they're the appropriate number of cards, because that's usually a giveaway. If someone has 61 cards written down on their deck list, they probably made a mistake, and we should check it. And if they wrote 59, they definitely made a mistake, you know? So there's a huge flurry there, and then at the end, there's like very, very little going on, but I have to stare intently and watch everything that happens in the top 8. So even though there's only 4 games happening at a maximum at the end of the tournament, it's, you know, the maximum amount of attention I have to put on any given thing that happens the entire day. The top 8 was kind of interesting. I don't remember all of what decks made the top 8, in part because I can't watch all 4 tables at once, so I had the floor judge, or my floor judge, watch 2 of the games while I watched 2 other ones. I do know in the top 4 there were 3 humans decks. One of which, the one who was not playing the mirror, also happened to win, so the finals was 2 humans decks, and the semifinals that had the mirror was so long. Oh my, it was settling into 5-minute thinks before doing actual nothing in a matchup where it's mostly creature soup. You're playing, even post board, maybe 10 non-creature spells, if that. Very, 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 very long game, and there were a few moments where I'm like, all right, let's hurry the players up. We're untimed, but you can't sit here forever. I want to go home at some point. Eventually, we had a winner, so it was cool. They got the first and second place both got their invites, and ultimately had a fun day judging this tournament. It was cool enough where I wanted to talk about it a bit. So thanks for listening. The other thing I wanted to do that was Magic related is a very different thing entirely, which is that another friend asked me to maybe not review, but go over a commander deck he was building. I still have to remind myself to say commander and not EDH, because that's how old I am. And I kept forgetting to look over it, but I figured, it'd be kind of cool to just talk about it on stream, talk about it as I go. The streaming aspect will require me to voice my thoughts more clearly than if I was just thinking about it. Maybe I wouldn't notice some of the stuff, but I figured it'd be a cool thing to do, and I know at least one Magic player is in the chat, so, or at the very least, he was at the beginning. If you're still here, thanks. There's also a pretty good chance he went to meet up with some of our other friends to go play. I think Oathbreaker is what they like to do on Mondays. But if anyone's still interested, I'm just going to talk about it, pad out the stream a little bit. Peachy Keen, I do know you, all right? I don't care what you say. So I figured I'll just go over this deck and see what we think about it. For a little bit of context, because Commander is a format in which people often like to do things that are not necessarily the most powerful or the most optimized, but because they have like an idea in mind, a kind of way they want to approach the game. So we're not going to be necessarily evaluating for like what's the best thing to be doing, because I know in advance that he wants this to be kind of a Tim deck. And by a Tim deck, I don't mean Timmy, meaning the like power player who just wants to do big things. I mean Tim, like Prodigal Sorcerer. It used to be, I don't know how much that's in modern Magic player vernacular. I don't know how much, like, because we haven't seen Tims in a long time, and I wonder how much people are aware of that nickname for cards. But a Tim is basically Tim was the nickname for Prodigal Sorcerer. It might have come from Monty Python, the Holy Grail, I'm not sure. But basically just a creature taps to deal a damage, or in this case, it's just a lot of twiddling. He wants to tap it on tap. So I know that going in, and that's going to help us evaluate some of this stuff, because some of it's going to be a little weird of like, what is this doing here? Like Gorgon Flare. What the hell is Gorgon Flare doing here? Unless you realize the whole point is he wants to be tapping and untapping Prodigal Sorcerer. I got kind of lucky where it happened to hover over that as I slid my mouse over. So he's trying to tap it on top Prodigal Sorcerer. Well, if it has Death Touch, that becomes a lot more of a threat than otherwise. Now, there are a couple of cards. There's one card I can think of offhand that he won't have access to because it's a black card. I think it's called like, is it like Blood Cultist? That sounds incorrect, but I am actually correct. It is Blood Cultist. It's a curse. Honestly, it's gonna, for those of you who are unaware, you're gonna see it happening a lot. Especially before before Wizards started printing an ungodly amount of product, I was kind of a Magic encyclopedia unto myself. So yeah, I'll remember random cards like this. Like this would be a pretty cool card for his deck. Synergizes really well, but doesn't have access to it because he's not playing black, and I'm sure there are very good reasons. My guess is you're not going to find a good way of getting this card into your deck that synergizes with any commanders you'd want to play, and maybe you lose other colors as other stuff. But that was the first card I thought of as like, oh, okay, you don't have access to this, and that could be good. Instead, let's start with what he does have. We have Kaidel and Ludovic. So Kaidel, remember, taps makes a butthole for each card you've drawn this turn, partner, and then Ludovic. At the beginning of each player's end step, the player may draw a card if a player other than you lost life this turn. Okay, so so just go make sure I understand this. So this is semi group hug, but only if someone that's not you is losing knife. So it's encouraging people to hit each other a little bit. I'm curious as to this pair of commanders. I wonder if this is just a colors thing. I know Kaidel is a good thing to tap and untap, but I wonder if there are any. Where's Teamer? Wonder if there are any 3-color commanders that, or like in these colors that would serve better towards this end. I don't see anything immediately. Yeah, I don't really see anything that works better for the strategy. So it's probably not a problem then. So yeah, I mean, even if it's just there for the colors, if there's nothing that works better, I mean, maybe Crom is just, well, it's more expensive for sure, but it's a more powerful effect. This has a neat tap ability, probably not a good one though. Oh, but it's also Friends Forever, so it has to be with Elmar specifically. Oh no, it has to be with another Friends Forever because they didn't want Friends Forever cards and partner cards. I don't think partner was great design space, to be honest with you, and this is one of the problems that they encountered was that issue. Yeah, I don't really see anything that's particularly better. But then that also makes you go, okay, I wonder if maybe Grixis would be a better color combination for this. There's a lot of stuff in red and blue that you definitely want. I wonder what you're getting out of green that's really that important. I guess you get Kaidel, but other than that, I guess you get Awakening. That's pretty good. Um, Quest for Renewal. Okay, you get some stuff. I don't see. Oh wow, very light on instants and sorceries. Wow, operating hugely at sorcery speed. Interesting. Or at the very least, spells only at sorcery speed. Okay, so that's probably why we're in these colors, is we want like blue, red, or just like the Tim colors. That's where you're going to find them. But wanted green for untap effects. I wonder. Okay, so we're gonna open a notepad so I can have some ideas to shoot his way later. Let me add this to our stream. Uh, right. I have to do this weird thing where like resize it so that OBS. Yeah, I can't just resize it on OBS. I actually have to resize the actual thing so that OBS will have the correct proportions for it. I can still see chat. Any evil, mean things you see there, I will notice them. So just a couple of ideas off the bat of cards I think I already didn't see in here. Something like Instill Energy, I believe the card is. Yeah, Instill Energy would be great. I'm gonna bring the font size down a little bit. Should still be able to see that. I wonder if he had. I didn't see Oh, okay, he does have Thousand Year Elixir. And I think, oh, what's that card? It's like untap all creatures. Is it like Inspire? No, what's that card? It's like green instant, untap all creatures you control. I know someone who plays it, so he should be popping in. That's not Nature's Chosen. It's the one you use. Um, Vitalize. Thank you. It's like I know you play this card. Nature's Chosen. Oh, neat. Yeah, Nature's Chosen. Also good. I know I can count on you for random old cards. This is a little before my time, so I'm not like it's not on my radar. I don't know if you were playing back then, Peachy Keen, or maybe you just remember the card. Vitalize is a little bit like it's less incremental value, right? That's one of the things in EDH is you, generally one-shot effects like untap all your creatures are going to be less good than something that lets you do it consistently. But this was a big enough version of that where it might still be worth it because you can you might get instead of one untap a turn over the course of 6 turns, you might get 6 untaps in 1 turn, and that might be better. So just some cards to suggest. But now let's go over some of these creatures. Probably don't need this many. Aladdin, gain control of target creature, target artifact, and then you lose. Ooh, Aladdin. It's cute, but it's a little. That's pretty low power. Like it's a lot of mana, and you only steal artifacts. Mm, okay, we're gonna have another notepad of like cut suggestions. It's possible this is on here because he has a copy, and then you want like, well, I have a copy, I kind of want to play it, but getting control of an artifact, unless you have a meta where you expect that's going to be really good, not not often that useful. The Beguiler of Wills would be good. Is that not on here? Oh yeah, I see. I see it's missing. Also, I guess while we're doing a different kind of, we're doing a different kind of stream than we've done previously, where we're like really doing a lot of Magic stuff. Let me know what you think about it. If this is interesting to you, and if you do like it, then maybe we'll do more of this in the future. Maybe people can send decks they want me to talk about. I guess we can put this here. It doesn't matter what it looks like for me, as long as it looks right to you. Put this. Do I just put this? Let me see how this scrolls. So the card stays in the same place. So I'll put it underneath the card. That's what we'll do. All right, so this is cards to cut. And then this is cards to add. And even if I don't send him a list of my thoughts, which I will, I can just point him at this stream and be like, "Hey, it's right there. Just look at that." He can see me. He can see me talking about it. But yeah, Beguiler of Wills is pretty good. Oh, if you had access to, well, I guess it's probably too many colors because you can get something like so if you had access to white, you could get Rubinia Soulsinger. If you had access to white and black, you can get Marique Reberet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we're gonna assume that these colors, like he has specific reasons for these colors, and we're gonna try not to deviate too much from that. Anger makes a little bit of sense to me. That seems fine. A fellow alchemist, sure. You want things that can tap and untap, seems fine. Arcanus is probably gonna be on the watch list. I'll put a question mark in front of anything that's on the watch list. Arcanus is a really powerful card. The thing is, it's incredibly slow. Tap to draw 3 cards, super, super good. But as a 6 mana creature, if you don't have access to a good haste enabler, so Thousand Year Elixir, Anger, and Lightning Greaves, maybe even um, Swiftfoot Boots, because that's an extra mana, right? It's likely to just get picked up and die before it can do anything. The 4 mana to save it is nice, but you can't really afford to spend that much mana on a thing. Even when the card was printed, that was a hefty cost, and we are now like 15 years later. That actually reminds me, I should recommend to him like boots. Um, boots are good for his deck. Like all of your things, all of your things have tap abilities. You just slapping it on there. It actually Lightning Greaves is even is extra good in that you don't need it to stay on the creature for very long. You can equip, use the tap ability, move it. It's effectively haste for your squad. Kura's Follower and Seraph make Wild Growth Utopia spell fertile ground good for mana. Yeah, that's true. So Kura's Follower is probably it's already in here. Yeah. It's already good enough. I don't think I like the Twiddle Your Lands package. We'll see how much he has for it, but I was actually going to recommend away from that. Lightning Greaves. So I had that thought too. Like maybe Lightning Greaves makes it hard to untap. However, oftentimes your untappers are things like a Phaedo Alchemist that target. So you just move the Greaves to the Alchemist, then untap. Move the Greaves to the Alchemist, untap the creature you want to use the ability of, and then move the Greaves back because it's 0 to move. It's because you only care about having haste for the moment where you activate the tap ability. Greaves would actually, you probably wouldn't trip over Greaves very much in this deck. It would probably work out better than Swiftfoot Boots because it's free. Um, it does restrict tapping and untapping the sorcery. That's true. I'm guessing a lot of this is going to be sorcery anyway. Like with Arcanist, you don't mind doing that at sorcery. With Archivist, you don't mind doing that at sorcery. Like with a lot of this stuff, like Bloom Tender especially, you want to do that sorcery anyway. Sure, the like tap deal ones aren't going to be as good, but then you can just end your turn with like that thing being untapped, and maybe you use your untapper on something else. You might trip over a little bit, but I think that's going to be a lot less restrictive than the extra mana for Swiftfoot Boots, and I don't think it's going to be so restrictive that you wouldn't want it in the deck. But I mean, like, yeah, it's good to like pay attention to what you're giving up and what you're with, like what trade-offs you're making with any given card. Cutting Spark Mage. This is again just more the like we want pingers, so that seems fine. Disruptive Pit Mage. Yeah, this seems cute. So Disruptive Pit Mage and Disruptive Student, yes, these would be ones where like being only able to untap at sorcery might get in your way a little bit. It's just kind of the it's just kind of the accommodation you have. This is the sacrifice you have to make. I don't think it would be like I don't think it's going to be coming up often enough where Greaves are bad. And that's only for exactly the turn where they come into play too. Right? If you play the Disruptive Pit Mage, then untap, play the Alchemist, play Boots, equip the Boots to the Alchemist, you can still double Pit Mage. So it still seems good. Empress Galena, gain control of target legend or legend. Yeah, seems fine. Urtai, counter spell. My guess is, with how sorcery speed this deck is, Urtai is probably going to be on the watch list. Not that it's bad. I think it's very good, and it fits the strategy perfectly. It's just a lot of mana, and the deck is very sorcery speed, so it's very possible. I personally just don't like Fauna Shaman. For me, for myself, I think the ethos of EDH, and I've done a lot of thinking about this. Too much thinking, most would say, that is that you're playing a 100-card singleton deck. You should probably endeavor to play different cards every game and not just search out the same 3 to play all the time. And so tutors are things I try to avoid, especially kind of medium tutors like Fauna Shaman. I'm not going to say to cut it. I'm just going to make my thoughts known and recommend him to this video if he wants to know the full breakdown of stuff and the things that I didn't send to him, that I don't send to him as just like my list of things to keep an eye on or to add or remove. Goblin Sharpshooter is great. Yeah, I mean, this is a thing, like, it's so weird to me. This is why CEDH feels so weird to me, is like the whole point is to maximize the 4 cards you play every game. And it's like, if I wanted to play the same cards every game, I would play a 60 card format where I can play a million 4-ofs or whatever else. There are a lot of my decks where it could be strictly better if I just put it in tutors, and I just refuse to do it. I make a few exceptions to that. So I have Mystical Tutor in one of my decks, in my control deck. I have mostly been okay with that because while I do usually get the same card every time, that card is Terminus, and I think a like 2-for-1 myself to get a cheap board wipe that also tucks as opposed to it gets around indestructibility and death triggers and yada yada etc. I think that's super reasonable. I actually get a little annoyed at myself when I search for other stuff. I actually did the last time I played. I searched for Torment of Hailfire, and I felt a little bad about it. But and like that's kind of the risk of tutors, and so I approached them really sparingly. I personally wish more people did this, but obviously they don't, and so you just kind of have to work around people kind of playing the same game cards every game. Genesis is fine. I think he's from what I've seen, uh, this is another watch list card. You're he has so much to spend mana on at sorcery speed, at like 3 mana on your upkeep to recoup a creature that's probably bad on rate, and like I haven't seen enough mana to justify something like this. My ideal with the Stranglehold emblem. I would be okay with starting games with the Stranglehold emblem, with the exception of uh, like if I play a Terramorphic Expanse or a fetch land, like fixing your mana, I think is something like it's fine to search your deck for. I don't really hate that much. But wait, what is Parcel Beast? Oh, I just didn't play during Ikoria. That's why I don't know. Look at the top of library land, put on the battlefield, and put. That's not bad. Um, I think Parcel Beast might be better off as I think Greenleaf Druid. Just because it's cheaper. No, it's not Greenleaf Druid. What is the card? Uh, there's a creature that does something very very similar, but it's from a core set. It's like 1 and a green 1/3. The going out of order, man. All right, Sinbad. What is Sinbad? Wait, did I spell it wrong? Oh, it's Sindbad. Um, no, no, not the one that gets a land. It does the same thing. It's 1 and a green 1/3 tap. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you can reveal it and put it in your hand. The thing is, it's just cheaper than Parcel Beast. Now, it doesn't put it into your hand if you miss. But also like this is just more expensive, and you're not going to want to mutate because this ability, one, it costs a mana, but also is going to compete with the tap abilities of your other creatures. That's why I was like, oh, maybe the other one. What is it? Draw a card, reveal if it isn't a land, discard it. Probably not worth it. He's probably better off with Merfolk Looter over Sindbad. Is it in here? I don't see Merfolk Looter. Like even Merfolk Looter is fine, but the thing is, he's gonna be so in like finding the lands isn't really the big deal. It's just having enough land mana in play is gonna be kind of tough. So I don't see enough mana here. Like there are no signets. There's no there are no talismans. I mean there's one Gilded Lotus, but like I don't think he has enough mana to really justify these big spells on top of activating Genesis every turn. Uh you're thinking too old. This is from like M20 or something, the card I'm thinking. Fa Adia Seer. Um, no, 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 no. It's like, maybe it's Dryad Greenseeker. Maybe that's it. Dryad Greenseeker. Okay, I was close. This card, Dryad Greenseeker. It doesn't do anything with the card if it's not a land. That's the big difference. Also, it's a 1/3, which is a little better than a 1/1. Um, not super relevant, but yeah. So here, look at the top card of your library. It's a land you put reveal and put in your hand. Nothing else happens. You don't mill cards that aren't lands. You just it's not strictly. Wait, how does it seem strictly worse? The other cards do the same thing. This effectively does the same thing. I guess it mills a card otherwise, but milling isn't necessarily something that he can really take advantage of. He has Anger and Genesis, and I think Genesis isn't very good. I don't even think Dry Greenseeker is good. I thought I put it in your hand into play for some reason. Um, Ooh, is it Reality Shaper? I'm trying to remember. No, no, no. What's the card called? Scape Shift? No. I think it's something Shifter. There's a card from Planar Chaos that casts. That's like a Harrow. Uh, well, yes, Genesis specifically, but like now it's like you're compounding things on top of each other that you don't necessarily have access to all the time, right? Then you'd have to like now you need the Fauna Shaman to go find all these pieces to make the mill better. Like he doesn't always have access to Genesis, uh, and I think all of these don't solve the Genesis problem. What is the name of that card? Okay, we're gonna advance search a little bit because I know it's a blue creature from Planar Chaos. And that's probably enough for me to find it. Dreamscape Artist. This one's not bad for him. We're gonna. This is more of a suggested card. It might not. Um, I'll put a question mark in front of anything that I'm not sure would be good. It's just more of a suggestion than a card you should definitely be playing. Dreamscape Artist is another like pretty reasonable tap effect. It costs 3 up front, but it pays you back with 2 of it, so it like effectively costs 1, and you do get to ramp. Yeah, it's a Hero Spell Shaper. I love this card. I love this card so much. It's not good anymore. I think occasionally it sees plays. I think I've seen it in Pauper a little bit, but yeah, it's not only is it a Hero Spell Shaper, it's blue, which like blue doesn't get access to stuff like that very often. So that's another suggestion. So Genesis is like this again. I don't even think Genesis is necessarily bad. It's just watch list. Like, do you have the mana for this? I don't think that you really do. Goblin Shooter is obviously great. I love this art. I'm usually the one for the older art. This art is so good. Look at it. He's got a scope. He's got 2 scopes for this mallet on a spring that's just bonking a guy who's right in front of. It's such a. It's this artist who is this Wayne Reynolds absolutely nailed like how goblins feel. It's just a phenomenal art. I love it so much. It's so good. That's all I have to say. It's probably a good card. Kelpie Guide. Kelpie Guard is really good. Yeah, and you don't even care about that psych ability. Yeah, it's pretty good for what you want. Kira's Follower, very good. Murkfiend Liege is good. It does make you. It makes the red creatures. It doesn't make the red creatures worse so much as having a red creature is now much worse than having a green or blue creature. So we're on the lookout for those. You don't like Wayne Reynolds? I haven't seen very much of. I don't remember very much of what he's done. You know what? Let's just do it. You know what? We're here. We're streaming for as long as we stream. So let's look around. All right, artist. Wayne Reynolds. I don't know what else he's done. I'm curious. Very spiky style. That's just not my taste. Johnny's not bad. Okay, there's a lot of stuff that's just like has blended into the background for me. Like I don't hate it, but it doesn't seem like it's not really standout art that I would talk about most of the time. I don't like hate it necessarily so much as this is a lot of stuff that I don't think very much about or think like, oh, that's really cool art. Ooh, he did brute force. I like that one. Okay, yeah, he's a pretty reasonable artist. I do like the cover of Winter art. And oh, he did Cunning Spark Mage. That one's not bad. Okay, a little bit of extra. Okay, I kind of see what you're saying. Like he's okay, but the sharpshooter is exceptional. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. I would Frontier Guide almost feels like it would fit this deck, but 4 mana to activate. Oh my god, that's just so much mana. Even when it came out, I'm just like, what? This is an uncommon. Can you imagine drafting this in Zendikar, where everything's a 2 drop? Sure, this is also a 2 drop, but like, there's 2 drops that are like your opponent's deck. If they got what they wanted, has 10 2 mana 2/1s with landfall abilities. Can you imagine trying to activate this card? Uh, was it good? I don't. I mean, you get landfall, but I don't know if people are doing what they're trying to do. That's you're gonna have a hard time doing anything with that. No, I know what you're talking about in draft, but in draft that was the secret of that, the like very quickly discovered secret of that draft format was uh 18 lands and as many chew drops as you could find. And sure, that is one, but you want to be playing out your creatures. I guess once you have your land drops, it can like once you run out of two drops, it can fill. Like I don't know. It seems maybe okay. It's kind of, oh man, maybe I'm being too negative. I don't know. All right, moving on. Patron wizard, sure. I don't know. Tims are not often wizards, but I guess it's just another copy. Oh, triple blue though. Ooh, triple blue though. Triple blue's gonna hard, but otherwise it's just like another disruptive student or just disruptive pit mage. Experiment Kraj. That's another reasonable suggestion. I expect that Kraj will end up being just like you put a counter on one thing once and it's just another copy of that until like maybe you find another thing you'd rather be doing twice instead, but it does do more of the same thing. Quicksilver Elemental? I don't remember what that card does. I remember seeing it. If I remember right, it like gathers abilities as well. I am enjoying doing this with chat. Maybe at some point I'll like try to build a deck on stream just with the help of chat. That'd be kind of gains all active abilities of target creature until end of turn. Yeah, maybe you'd have to find like I don't. You need a very specific ability to synergize with this because as of right now, it's just like you can pay a blue on top of another tap ability to tap this. It's kind of an expensive tapper, but if you have something that like if you have a creature that says like untap this and target creature on a tap ability, that wouldn't exist, right? But then yeah, that's true. That is a lot of mana just commander. Oh, we'll put it on the like maybe this is good. Yeah, yeah, maybe that can be all right. Let me see if I can make this a little wider so we don't have as much wrapping. Okay, cool. All right, what else has we got in here? So we have Thrasios in the deck. That's kind of funny. That's probably not great. Um, Horseshoe Crab doesn't it just untaps itself. It's blue untap itself. So it's like yeah, you can like sink a lot of mana into getting the same tap effect a million times, sure. But there's actually a better version of that where you can just play Freed from the Real, and then you don't need to assemble like these three creatures in play. You just slap this on whatever thing you want to do a million times. Which let me see if that's in here. It's in here already. Yeah, it's just easier access to this kind of effect. If Horseshoe said Crab had the ability tap, untap, target creature, and Horseshoe Crab, then you could like easily go infinite with Quicksilver Elemental. But I guess you wouldn't even need with Quicksilver. Yeah, like they would never print a card like that because it just goes infinite so easily. Prodigal Pyromancer, obviously, it's another Tim. Prodigal Sorcerer, Razorfin Hunter, one of the best Tims ever. Seraph, that's kind of funny. That's actually really cute because you tap for the cost, so by the time they deal damage, they have Death Touch, and then if you can just untap them to protect, but then still have Death Touch when they deal damage. That's cute. I wonder. Red feels almost forced in this deck. Like we're kind of forcing it to be in here, but I mean, how do you build a Tim deck without having all the Tims? Seedboard Muse obviously super good. Seeker of Skybreak obviously great. Thrasios, I don't think Thrasios is good or worthwhile. Like you don't have that much mana. Like not really. Not from what I've seen. You don't have creatures that tap for tons, and like this is a great mana sink, but I don't think this is like I think you definitely can't swing it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this deck makes more mana than I think it does, but it looks like it doesn't make very much. Like that was one thing all these cuts can go to is making mana. All right, Viashino Heretic destroys an artifact. Is there not a better way to destroy artifacts than Viashino Heretic? Because that's a classic. Have they really not done better than this? There's like I seem to remember there's like a Tuk Tuk creature. that does it. No, I guess not. Yeah, maybe that's fine. I mean, sure, it's artifact destruction. It's probably not going to be a standout card, but you need a little bit of interaction. That's fine. Hammer Mage. This is where I wish there were better MTG thesauruses. It'd be a lot of work because you basically have to manually find each thing that connects to each other. It's really hard to do it in a in an algorithmic way. I've seen sites that try and they fail spectacularly. They'll misunderstand what things make it similar. So you'll be looking for something like Pack Rat and it'll just give you like Relentless Rats, and it's like that's not really what I'm looking for in this, right? I'm looking for a discard outlet, or I'm looking for something that swarms the board by itself. Discard a card, destroy. Oh, this is a Meltdown. Uh, Meltdown Spell Shaper. Hmm. I think Viashino. Okay, it's close. So there are trade-offs, right? Hammer Mage lets you sweep a lot, but it costs you a card and a lot of mana. Whereas the Viashino Heretic only gets one thing, but it doesn't cost you cards and it's pretty cheap. I don't know, it's pretty close. I think I would personally prefer the Viashino Heretic, and I don't think you want two things in that spot, but it's worth thinking about. This will be another one where like he can watch the VOD if he wants to see like additional things that I didn't feel worth recommending, or why certain things didn't work. Vithian Singers was one of the first things I thought of as like a good one. The Unearth is unlikely to be super relevant, but even like its front side is about the same as Prodigal Pyromancer, and it's fine. I'm the sort of degenerate that would play both Dwarven Blast Miners. Yeah, but then like your deck has to make a lot of mana to justify all this, and then like sometimes you just don't have artifacts worth destroying, and it feels kind of bad. Dwarven Blast Miner, I don't hate. The only thing is like the incentive to go after just mana fixing, but obviously there are some lands like Cabal Coffers in Field of the Dead where you I don't think you can. I also personally just don't like land destruction generally, but you have to destroy lands like that, or at the very least find ways of interacting with them. In fact, one thing that's kind of surprised people in my control deck is I play Leyline of the Void, which feels weirdly hateful for the kind of Magic I like to play. Except in my play group, there's a Gitrog monster player, and it was either coming after his mana base or coming after his graveyard, and I felt like the graveyard was a much fairer way. So like you can have your Cabal Coffers, but you can't have your graveyard. You know, so you got to interact, otherwise you're just gonna get run over by stuff like that. The follow-up solution to that was just build a better lands combo deck in my blanking on the name, Tatiova, my Tatiova deck, which sadly takes ages to resolve. Okay, Vizier of Tumbling Sand is probably the best of this effects because you can turn it in to get it once though. Uh, Ortheon, Hero of Lava. What the hell are these cards? I sometimes I feel like you make up the card in your imagination to suggest to me, and then like will it into the world. Like what the hell are these cards? Like the nature's chosen of like just another instill energy that exists. I'm somewhat convinced that card didn't exist until you suggested it, Peachy Keen. All right, and it just like got willed into existence once you suggested it. All right, create a token. That's another. Okay, yeah, that seems good. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it seems good. Um, I'll put that on the list. Yeah, that seems solid. People say that when they see it in front of them too. Yeah, it feels that way sometimes. I'm like, wait, does card exist? And again, I'm like known with my friends as being the magic encyclopedia. They'll be like, oh, what's that card that does like this thing? And I'm like, oh no, it actually does this, and this is what it's called, and here's the set that it's from. And you're recounting it like what you're remembering it doing is actually incorrect. They don't even have to give me the right information. I'll figure it out. It's I don't understand. And so I can do that, and yet all these cards. I'm like, wait, that exists. This is probably the Vodalian Mage is probably the worst of these effects, but it's just another one, so sure, whatever. I guess you would know because you have a Twiddle type deck. Um, Volswalk Sorcerer is very good. Willbreaker, sure. It makes me wonder about stuff. Will Breaker makes me wonder about stuff like Kiora's Follower. Is just another target permanent? Yeah, it makes these tapper and untappers. There are more of these. There are a lot more untappers. I have to maybe in a second I'll go. I used to have a mill deck for the God of Deception. What's the God of Deception called again? Um, I don't. I also don't remember how to spell deception. So instead of embarrassing myself, I'm just gonna start. Yeah, Fenax. I used to have a Fenax deck, and because it gives this tap ability, found a lot of ways of doing stuff like that. Isika. No, it's only legendary creatures get vigilance, and yeah, they're probably too small for that. But I was reminded of another card that is super good and also a little bit of a pet card of mine, which is Hemin's Aura. This is a card where I get that same reaction from people of wait, this exists? Are you sure you didn't just create that card since we started talking? I'll pull it up in a second, but I just realized I wanted to bring the font down on the other list. I love this card. This card is just super super good, and it's another like freed from the real, but it has extra text. It gives the enchanted creature Morphling, which is another card that um, which people have long since forgot about, but it says, hey, this text box, put this text box on enchanted creature. Uh, yeah, this card's super super good. There were a lot of oops, I killed the table combos with Pemin's Aura and Fenax. With King Makar was in particular. It was like you start doing crazy math of like I can mill for my black mana times my blue mana plus the number of or plus the sorry, my black mana plus 3 times the quantity of my blue mana plus creatures my opponents control. It was like really wild how crazy that math got. Um, oh yeah, Zombie with Pemin's Aura. Honestly, I think Azami is likely going to be on the watch list, but I don't feel the need to include that because he'll likely come to that conclusion on his own. There are some wizards, not a ton. I should do like a search. Like Archivist already does that. I should look through. We'll make a note to my remind me if I forget. Once we're done looking through the creatures, we're gonna look through how many of them are wizards and how many of them don't already do that, or you would want to do that. Azami is likely going to be underwhelming. She draws 2 or 3 extra cards per turn without haste if you have the wizards to support her. From what I've seen, there's only like 4 other wizards in the deck. So if it's just her ability, she draws is an archivist that you pay an extra blue for haste basically. Um, and so it's like the 5 mana investment. Oh, I guess they both are. I mean, you probably want to use Kaidel for mana. Um, and Ludovic, I guess so. But like, I don't know. I just don't see Ludovic as being particularly good. So I just don't know how much he's going to want to be in. He's going to be in play. I don't know. Maybe it is good, but we want to do a check because if she's unlikely to be next to multiple other wizards, she's probably not going to be that good. Again, I'm not even going to put it on my suggestions to cut or my watch list for cards to cut. It's just he might come to that conclusion on his own. It was Inga and a Sika you were thinking of. Was creatures you control have vigilance and tap, add a mana of any color, use it only to cast creature spells. This is probably really good for him. Yeah, this seems really good. When you cast a creature spell, 3 or more mana was creature. Yeah, this seems really good. It gives him a lot of the mana I was worried about. It's only for creature spells, but he has so many creature spells. I guess I've already suggested a bunch to be cut, and there's like non-creatures that are being suggested, but we'll just put this on the suggestions list and see what he thinks. Like maybe he'll agree. I'm not going to say, by the way, that I am like definitively correct on how to build this. This is more like my biases and my thoughts about how to build stuff, and another reason why I'll point him at this VOD the for more of my thoughts on the matter because I don't think these are just I don't think I'm like objectively correct. I think I have my ideas. They're worth considering, and maybe maybe you still disagree, and that's fine. Willbreaker is fine. Willow Satyr. Okay, we're gonna look at the rules text on Willow Satyr. I can already tell that one has had an update. Again, oh yeah, seems good. It's a little expensive, but seems fine. And it's only as long as it remains tapped. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it seems fine. But like for what it does. Yisan, you do not have a Yisan curve. Yeah, you just do not have a Yisan curve. Equal to, and it has to be equal to, not equal to or less. Um, oh yeah, because it's from Legends. Yeah, Willow State is probably expensive, and it's a rare. Yeah, yeah. Yisan, you do absolutely do not have a Yisan curve. You have 2, 3, 4. You have 2, 3 mostly. You have a couple of 4s and a 5 and some and like a few 5s, but you have no 1s and like you don't like untap. I guess you can untap him manually, but that's a lot of it. I do not think Yisan is good in your deck. I understand the idea of like it's another thing to keep tapping and untapping. I would prefer to replace this with cards that tap and untap stuff. And I think I definitely will go through my box and like find the remnants of my Fenax deck to find it. Okay, so what's a? Oh, we're gonna have to like figure out. Oh, I'm telling him to cut Aladdin anyway, so I don't have to figure out what creature type it is. We're gonna see how many wizards are here. Well, like wizards that you would use to do this. So like a Fado Alchemist, yes and no, because if you have an Archivist, it already does this. If you don't, like it gives you another untap. But even if this wasn't a wizard, it would do that. So like we'll count. I'll count it, but it's in a little in some ways I wouldn't like if I were building the deck exclusively for me and nobody else was like had input, I would not count it for Azami considerations. Just like I'm not counting Arcanist or Archivist because while they are wizards, they both tap to draw cards on their own. Archivist by itself, like sure, the turn you play if you play Archivist after Azami, then you get pseudo haste on that, and like same with Arcanist, but let's like we can't assume like it's weird to assume that that's going to be how things happen. Instead, I wonder, does this show me? Oh, okay, that doesn't do what I wanted. But and like Arcanist draws more cards, kind of thing. There's a Flash Haste Wizard from. Is it that pings? It pings. Yeah, creatures of the same. Is it Static Caster? Yeah, that's. I used to play that in. I used to play that in Legacy Miracles when I played Legacy. Um, yeah, I mean, sure, that would make it better. Okay, so let's. So we'll count. We have one wizard. These two are like prime candidates, right? You leave them up, and then if they can't, your opponents will have to play around them. They will inevitably not counter anything, and then you draw cards with them. So these are like the best things to be doing with Azami. I will say that. So that's 3. I think Galena might be a wizard, but I don't think you want to be doing that with her. I mean, wait. Oh, because it's Empress. The Empress Galena. She's not a. Oh, she's a noble. I guess she's not a wizard. I guess if there were no legends and she was a wizard, you might use it in that way. Airtie is a wizard, but I recommended cutting this because it's likely to be too much mana. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I guess they're enough. Yeah, okay. Thrasios is, but I said to cut that too. It's just not that many. Voldalian Mage is almost certainly a wizard. 8, 9. So like 9 wizards. If you can expect to have one other wizard in play, that's probably fine. And with 9 other wizards, yeah, that's probably okay. I'm gonna finish going through the list, and then I'll go look through my cards for the random untappers. Zurin Spellcaster, probably because no one's heard of that card. Probably because you made it up right now, and it exists. Yeah, Zurin Spellcaster. Yep, on theme. And inevitably, I'm not gonna try to build this. I'm not gonna try to give card suggestions as though I was building it myself because like if I were, I would try to like match up. Okay, these are the cards going in, these are the cards coming out, 1-to-1 or whatever. I'm just gonna like give my suggestions, let him think about it, see what he agrees with and disagrees with, and come and like if he needs to make room for more cards than I say to cut, he can figure out how he's going to do that. I'm not building the deck for him. I'm just giving suggestions. And in exchange for me taking so long to get to it, he is getting my full attention on stream for quite a while. I think that's fair. Green Sun Zenith, we have to look at like what your green creatures actually are, which are worth zenithing for. Like you don't really want a Zenith for Genesis. You can get Fauna Shaman, I guess, to get like I don't know. But so we have Bloom Tender. I don't know how much that's really worth the Green Sun. It's fine, I guess. Mercfiend Liege is obviously great. Kiora's Follower is fine. Seraph is fine. Seedborn Muse is good. I guess I would just be on the lookout. Just like pay attention to like how often Green Sun is like worth casting in one of your limited hits, especially since a lot of these hits are like not hits. Like don't like Yasan is bad. Don't put it in your deck. Willow Satyr is probably not worth a Green Suns for. I'd probably rather have just another untap effect. Like you probably want more interaction. Well, he has a lot of creature interaction. I guess I won't appraise it on that sense. Rootwater Hunter. That one actually sounds familiar to me because I knew, or maybe I'm thinking Rootwater Matriarch. And maybe this card just didn't exist before now. Yeah, I guess Rootwater Hunter is fine. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, Rootwater Hunter seems good. He might not know about some of these cards existing, especially a lot of older cards. Like this is from Tempest. Who the fuck knows cards from Tempest? So he might have an idea for this, and just like, okay, I'm not putting every version of this because he doesn't realize they exist. Alternatively, it might be like I have so many, maybe I don't want all of them. I've had that come up before. Like I recently built mono red control and Oathbreaker, and I wanted the idea is that Pyroclasm was really good in my metagame, so I wanted a million Pyroclasms. Ended up having to cut a lot of those effects because there are too many. That said, I'll suggest it to him and see what he thinks. It's up to him. Worldly Tutor. Again, I just don't love tutors, and there are a few things worth getting. Mercfiend Liege in particular. So I'm not going to say to cut or whatever. That's just like my personal preference to not have that many tutors. Like I didn't put Fauna Shaman on the removal list either. Basilisk Scholar is fine. It gets better with a lot of these pingers that we have suggested. Gilded Lotus. Gilded Lotus is a card I like a lot, especially when your deck is pretty mana hungry like this one is. But you can't just have this. You need to ramp into it. I think I'm just gonna put in the cards to add just like more ramp. Like the deck is pretty mana hungry in comparison to how much mana it makes. I know a lot of it's in the enchantments, but there aren't that many. Like I took a good glance. It's not enough of them, and I think those are very clunky ways of doing it. Gorgon Flail makes sense and gets better with some of the cards that we suggested. Gorgon's Head, same thing. Kieran Negotiations might be redundant, but it does make them pingers. Let me see what that card is. Chiron. Tap an untapped creature you control deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. It doesn't hit creatures. If this was cheaper and or hit creatures, maybe I'd suggest it. Even being redundant, because then it turns stuff. One thing I'm on the lookout for is things that turn disruptive hit mage and disruptive students into something proactive you can do, because if people play around them, you might not ever use the effect, and if they do something else, it could be really good. So if this hit creatures, maybe I guess it still does something, right? Because it hits players, but you have 120 life. That your opponents have 120 life. I don't know if it's worth playing a card to deal like an extra 2 or 3 damage every now and again. Like I would expect this to not do very much per game. But if it hit creatures, it would be worth it. I didn't know that card existed either. But a lot of the cards were, yeah, 120. So I say 120 life because I often think about how my opponents. I lump my 3 opponents together because when you do that, you get a little bit. It's a different view of what the game situation is that I think is sometimes helpful for how to visualize things. So you have 3 opponents, each with 40 life. That's 120 total opposing life. Sometimes, if you think about it in those terms, you realize why EDH decks have to go really big is because you might have to do all of that by yourself. You can't necessarily rely on your opponents doing the work for you. Additionally, this is why I call things like Swords to Plowshares a 1/3 for one, because you're trading 1 for 1 in cards, but you have 2 other opponents who didn't lose a card. So you're trading for 1/3 of the collective opponent's card. I sometimes find it helpful to consider my 3 opponents as one archenemy. The only real difference is that one archenemy isn't always trying to point everything at me, which is really nice. And certain effects are better than when you're playing as one player, but it's a helpful way of thinking about the game, I find. All right, so we saw Gorgon Stones, Mage Stone. Yeah, seems really good. Mana Vaults. I he doesn't have enough ways of untapping Mana Vault for this to be really like 3 colors. First of all, look how many colored mana symbols he has. Like it pays for some stuff, not like I guess it pays for enough, but uh he only has like one way, or he has like 2 or 3 ways, I guess, of untapping a permanent. He says I think it's just Kelpie Guide and Kior's Follower, actually. I don't think there's another one. Oh, I guess Vizier. So he has like some ways, but those are gonna be like I don't know. This is a little questionable to me, even though it's a good card. I also personally don't like fast mana in EDH. I think it often leads to really unbalanced games. Um, I guess that's a really good question of how it's winning otherwise. Um, kind of, because like the pingers can already go face, and like maybe that's what this deck needs is a more consistent win condition, because all of these creatures are really small. But I think that's going to be a problem irrespective of the negotiations. And well, maybe, all right, I'll put it on the maybe. Like I guess that question is good enough where uh, I'll let him think about whether it's worth playing. Okay, why don't I move this down? Hmm? Why does this? All right. Instead, let's order this to the top. All right, cool. We have a little bit more space on here, and I'll just start. Scrolling. Okay, but yeah, sure. I'll put that on the like. You can think about it. Sure. We'll add that, and we'll just start scrolling past. Um, Meekstone kind of steps on some of your tappers, right? Like it steps on Arcanus. I guess not much. Genesis should be in your graveyard anyway. Mercfiend Liege, I guess, makes things start to not untap, but then you get the extra untap, so it's like it kind of steps on it, but not really. Yeah, actually, I guess Meekstone's fine. That's surprising. I actually didn't expect it to be that good. But maybe that's a problem in itself, in that people don't do that. Fury Stoke Giant makes them hit creatures or players. That's just for one turn, though, right? Though I wouldn't play this except a token deck. Yeah, because it's just the turn it enters the battlefield, right? And then you can sack it to do it. Yeah, we'll suggest it. We'll just like say it's on. We'll just it's on. Um, I also don't know that it's good, but it's a card that's on theme. We'll suggest it, and if he likes it, there you go. Stark of Wrath. Oh my god, these like blasts from the past. Destroy target artifact or creature that permanent's controller gains control of him. Oh, I see what you're saying, because you can like tap it, untap it with the ability still in the stack, and then tap it again. Maybe. I think it can do a pretty significant amount of damage. Oh, but then like things like Beguiler levels can take it back. Again, we'll put this on the like here card suggestions to think about. And I don't think it's particularly good either, but it's a card worth thinking about that might not have crossed his radar. All right, Puppet Strings. Yep, seems good. Soul Ring, sure. Staff of Domination. The rare instance of not trying to combo with it. That said, he might be trying to combo with it, because Kaidel can easily make enough mana. He doesn't seem to have that many ways of drawing enough cards for it to combo off, but that threat is there, which I personally don't love A plus B combos, but he also, I don't even know what his payoff is. Whatever, you do you. Thran Dynamo is another weird one. Like, you have Thran Dynamo, but no no signets and no talismans, which signets in particular can turn all this colorless mana you have from your artifacts into the right colors for all these colored mana symbols you have. Look at all these triple mana, like Patron Wizard's called triple blue. You're in a 3-color deck and you're making colorless mana to the exclusion of colored mana. Okay, let's see. Awakening we already covered. That card's really good. Charisma seems really good and is getting better with some of these card suggestions. Yep. Cowardice. Whatever. Return its owner's hand. This is on the watch list. This is very, very good when you're exclusively targeting your opponent's stuff. But untappers are a big, well, maybe not a big part of your strategy. They probably should be a big part of your strategy, and I'm about to recommend it be a bigger part of the strategy. And so when you're untapping your own stuff and they get returned to the hand, that's pretty bad. So this would be like you kind of have to pick between targeted untappers like a Fado Alchemist and whatever, and cards like Cowardice, because this is symmetrical. Dawn's Reflection, you don't have land untappers. Like, this is where I was saying, like, the kind of ramp he has is weird. Like, this is really clunky even when it works correctly, and you don't have land untappers. You have no other ridiculous suggestions other than this deck might need a bit more mana and a lot more instants that interact. Yeah, I agree. That was another thing I forgot to mention, was just like um, um, interactive instance. Yeah, that's a big one. Even like just a small grip of counter spells, things like Arcane Denial, Negate, just to keep yourself alive from people doing something bigger than what you can handle. Uh, like enough mana to underneath you to support casting these spells. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that assessment. Dismiss into Dream is really cute. 7 mana. That's a lot of mana, and you don't have you don't make that much for it. And the problem isn't the big mana card. It's not having the mana underneath it. So I don't have a problem with this. Just noting that. Um, Also, for the mana base, he probably hasn't. So the lands he put that he doesn't have his fixing lands in here. It's just the utility lands. So I don't know what his mana base looks like, but the Shadowmoor filter lands, uh, for blue, super important. There are so many blue mana symbols in here. Right, triple blue on Azami, triple blue on Arcanist, triple blue on Patron Wizard. Merc Fiendly is not quite triple blue because you can pay green mana. Triple blue on Charisma, a million blue for Freed from the Real. It's just hard to make that much blue, like as much blue as you need, especially when you're 3 colors. And like Kaidel makes colorless, Soul Ring, Duran Dynamo make colorless. The Shadowmoor filter lands are probably where he wants to be for some of this stuff. So this would be like, is it Flooded Grove? It's going to be a little awkward in that it doesn't make colors by itself, and I saw there were a bunch of colorless lands already. But being able to turn a green into double blue is, I think it might be necessary. Not just beneficial, but actually necessary. And this is, again, where signets would be good, because you can turn red into green-blue off of a Simic Signet. And, like, you don't have that much of red in terms of mana requirements. You have one double red card that I think should get cut, and one other double red card. Everything else is single, and there aren't that many of those. This is mostly a blue-green deck that is paying homage to red in the fact that a lot of pingers are red. So being able to turn red mana into useful stuff might be the way you need to go, because your deck is so mana hungry. My solution to that, so my control deck is Esper colors, but not a lot of black, like a lot of black symbols on casting costs. My solution to that is just every almost every land makes blue unless it's a basic, and there are only 2 lands, or there are, I guess 3 lands. I have 2 basic swamps, and Vajuka Bog is the only lands that don't make blue or white. But you can't really get away with that because you do have a double red thing. You have some other red here, and like it's consistently. Well, I guess you can a little bit get away with that. Just have a very light red splash. I don't remember if we didn't suggest very much in the way of red cards, so maybe that is maybe that is a suggestion then. That is another way of going about it. Free from the Real is already good. Growing Rights of Itlamok. Uh, I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to flip this, and I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to use all this green mana because you don't have tons that uses green. It's just like casting a bunch of green spells. I guess maybe it's good. This is kind of on the watch list. We'll put that on the watch list. Like I know it seems really really good because it's a lot of mana, but it's not the kind of mana that you spend as frequently because you don't have triple green, right? There's no triple green anywhere. There's a decent amount of double green, and there are a lot of green cards, but you also have to have a lot of creatures for this, which is a little bit win more, a little bit of like things are already going well, and people aren't interacting with your swarm of morons. All right, moving on. Market Festival Enchantment is half from it. Okay, it's another Dawn's Reflection. Again, I don't think this is the right way of going about your mana, unless you're gonna put in an untapped lands package, which Peachy Keen was suggesting in the chat earlier. Oh, Pemin's Order is already here. Cool. All right, he's ahead of me. Someone else knew that this card existed. This is wild. This never happens. Who knows about cards? What kind of mad lad would know about cards existing? Oh, whoops. Didn't mean to scroll there. All right, Quest for Renewal, obviously great. Rhystic Study, it's like a staple. You don't have to, but it's always good. And like card draw is going to be a little conditional elsewhere in your deck, so yeah, sure. Survival of the Fittest. I just don't like tutors, and like I guess this justifies this plus this Worldly Tutor and Fauna Shaman together justifies Genesis in the sense of like you can Worldly Tutor for Fauna Shaman, which can get the Genesis engine going. Survival also gets Genesis going. Like sure, I think a lot of your stuff is redundant enough where you don't need to be searching, and I personally don't like the idea of just like I play every game by getting the same 4 cards. That's up to you, and I'll just point you at this VOD because I'm not gonna include it in the card list, but that's just how I feel about it. Last the lands, Alchemist Refuge. I get the impulse because like you're blue green, and it seems always like you always put it in, and like all of your stuff is sorcery speed, but none of your stuff really does much at at instant speed. Putting in your tapper at end of turn just like gives a little bit of protection, but you waiting to pay 3 more mana to do that. It's not 3 more mana per card if you have the mana to do multiple things in a turn with doing this, but that seems really unlikely. And unless you have specifically anger or specifically Thousand Eyes Elixir, flashing stuff in isn't going to be a big deal. And colorless mana is a pretty big hit. Your deck is really color symbol intensive. So I'm just going to put like just don't play Alchemist Refuge. This is really hard because like oftentimes I have this happen to me sometimes as well where you just really want to play this really cool utility land, but you end up having color problems. I had this when I built Cross, where it was just too many utility lands, too much colorless mana, and I had trouble playing my cards. Say, I kind of get with Arcane Lighthouse. That's fine. I would only I don't think you need. I wouldn't play Detection Tower. I don't think that one's worth it. Just play the one. There's too many colorless lands. I know there's only 8 lands here, and like only 3 are colorless, or I guess there are only a few of them are colorless, but you have so many colored mana symbols. All right, Lotus Field. You don't have a lands package, so we'll put this um, like enchant lands and Lotus Field is like either cut uh, or add land untappers, which can like synergize with your other stuff, right? You can have a creature untapper that untaps your land untapper, which untaps the Lotus Field. Like that's a lot of mana, and that could solve some of your mana problems. But you don't have that package, and you'd have to make a lot of cuts to find it. So as of right now, the Lotus Fields looks like you do stuff with it, but like you only have 2 things that untap it, and you don't, and that would be to the exclusion of untapping your other stuff. You're already gonna have a lot of there's gonna be a lot of decision making in this deck, just because like your one untapper can probably untap 3 kinds of effects, and this is adding another point of tension for that. You don't get all of it, right? And so, Lotus Veil is even worse. Like, just don't play Lotus Veil. Um, like, just don't. Even if you add the package, Lotus Veil is just a bad card because you have to untap lands, and this comes in. Oh no, it doesn't come in tapped. Okay, maybe it's fine, but like it can be interacted with. There's not a lot of that, but still. And you don't have the package for it. If you did, maybe I guess if you did, it's probably fine. But all right, sure. Minamo seems great. Temple of the False God is good, but not with all these other colorless lands, including Winding Cannon, the next one. Yeah, I just cut. Yeah, just don't play these flash lands. You don't have the mana for it. Um, okay, so that's like the cards that we've already that are already in the list. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna like dip off screen slightly. Um, Now for like some card suggestions of cards I know exist, but I don't remember the names of. I have the the Shattered Remains of my own old Fenax deck. We'll see if there's anything in here that that's good. I know there are some cards that are gonna be useful out of here. I just don't remember the names of the untappers, so I'm gonna see if I can find some of them. I don't see them yet. Okay, we already have the Fate Stitcher in there. Puppeteer, that's another one. I'm just gonna pull them out and then I'll add them to the list in just a moment. Um, Tidewater minion is fine. I'm probably gonna add these to the list and then literally just hand them the cards and he can use them if he wants. Tide Force Elemental. That was the one I was thinking of. That one's super good. Okay, so there aren't a ton that are still in the remains. I built this deck years ago and I've been slowly removing cards from it that I use in other stuff. So there's not a lot still. There's only like 30 cards left, not including, or like maybe even including lands. But yeah, these three, Puppeteer. I'll look them up so we can show them on stream. Just Puppeteer, just boom, is an untap. Puppeteer. Uh, Tide Water minion. Whoops. Tidewater minion. It's a little expensive at 5 mana, and like, okay, you can skip this part because it doesn't really matter that much, but untap's permanent. Um, and the last one is Tide Force Elemental. Why is it not coming up? Okay, it wasn't it didn't want to. Yeah, so it's it costs mana to untap. Same with the Puppeteer, and this one's blue, which is even worse. But landfall to untap, it can get you a lot of untaps, especially if you have something like taps to put a land into play. You can just like put all the lands in your hand into play and keep on tapping with this. You desperately need chromatic lantern. That was a typo, but the typo ended up including my saying it just isn't but that's kind of funny. Mental. Tide Force Elemental. Chromatic Lantern is like something you really, really need. And there was one last thought I had, and I cannot remember it now. Oh, a win condition. So you like the Peachy Keen in chat made a good point of like without Kyren negotiations, like how do you end the game? I don't think Kyren negotiations will do a particularly good job of ending the game, but it shines a light on the problem of like how do you win? You get a lot of incremental advantage, but the only real win condition is like taking your opponent's stuff. The thing is, you can currently only take legendary creatures with Empress Galena, Willow Satyr. Now I guess Willbreaker as well. We are now. There's also the suggestion of playing Beguiler of Wills, which will help with that. But you're a little bit relying on your opponents to help you. That they'll provide creatures for you and also not stop you from taking them. Now I know there's a little bit of You do have to do a little bit of assuming things will work when you build a deck. You can't if you assume nothing works, then obviously you'll never win. But there should be something a little more proactive here. I'm not exactly sure what that needs to be, how to fill that in. Maybe if you wanted to go maybe if you wanted to maybe if you wanted to put in more of the like land untapping stuff and play something like Helix Pinnacle, uh, that's a I don't love that solution. I think that's a little ham-fisted in terms like it doesn't feel that elegant or it doesn't feel like it builds into the strategy. But that is an option. And but so like that's think about that. But like there's got to be something better, and I can't think of what it is right now. Maybe even like I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that really works, and I really can't. Like Fenax had that solution built in with Fenax. Maybe that's something you should look to out of a commander. Maybe try to look for. I mean, even Maelstrom Wanderer, as funny as it is, gives all your creatures haste to use their tap abilities and is an attacker. I think that's also a little bit forcing forcing a weird solution onto something that's like slamming an oval peg into a round hole. It's not quite off, but doesn't quite fit either. But maybe there's a commander that can fill in this gap. Actually, we still have this open, so maybe I can like find something quickly. I don't think so because we were in the just a million partners and nothing with its own defined identity here. Yeah, I don't even see. Yeah, there's all just partners, which is less likely to find you a win condition because partners were kind of designed to not do that very well. Um, what does Averna do? No, it's a cascade synergy thing. At the beginning of combat, you turn one add double butthole and cast spell accidents cost. Okay, so no, that doesn't work either. Um, yeah, I don't see anything immediately, and I'm not gonna like do that deep of a dive. I'm already almost 3 hours into my stream, and well, I think that is normal for most streamers. I'm still working up, so I'm getting a little tired here. I really appreciated. This is a little off topic. Really appreciated interacting with chat, especially on the Magic stuff, which is why it went so long. Is that I was able to get into it and we could talk about it, really think things out, put more thought into it than I think I was ordinarily going to. When someone hands me a deck to look over, I usually give it a once over. But in this format, with chat here and being able to go through the cards one by one in a list like this, while focusing on it, you definitely got more input than I think you would have otherwise. Which might be more of a comment of me being less helpful normally. You can take that as you will, I suppose. So, oh, and of course, because of anger, you have to pay attention to your mana base. You need to have the right fixing, but also be able uh, to reliably have a mountain. But in any case, I think those are the totality of my thoughts. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out for all of the stream, but in particular the Magic section. I think I'm gonna do this. If it feels like something I want to talk about that is not necessarily like the debate stuff, we'll just do that. And if people are here to and happy to hang out with it, I very much appreciate it. So, I think we're done going over this deck list. Think we are done going over this video. I think I already removed it from my watch later. Tomorrow, maybe we'll just do a Prager day. Just watch a couple Prager videos, get very upset. And other than that, I think unless there is anything else the chat wants to pop in with that I may have forgotten about, I think we're ready to sign off. So thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you tomorrow. Bye then.